All right, welcome. We are live. This is Orion Rising. Welcome. Show this out. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. Okay, it is Friday, the Law of One. Penny, welcome. Rick, welcome. I can see people who talk in the chat. Share this out. I got to share it out to like one place, my page, and I think returning to the old ways. So I didn't even share it to, well, I'm also live on Orion Rising, but I didn't share it to like the Orion Coalition that hadn't shared it anywhere. I didn't have time. My computer's acting weird. Cody, welcome. My computer's acting weird. So for whatever reason, it's having a hard time. And when I logged on to StreamYard, it was saying I had lost contact with like everything on Facebook. So I was trying to, as quickly as possible, make sure to turn everything back on and give authorization on Facebook. Let me turn off this overlay and put myself into full screen here. And the problem with that is that like everything other than my personal page and Orion Rising, for some reason, in returning to the old ways, I got that one authorized, but everything else wouldn't authorize, and I kept clicking on it, and I didn't have time to do that, including one Twitter channel. So it's on the normal Twitter channel live where I go, but I couldn't get it to authorize just about anything else. It was driving me crazy. Denise, welcome. So share this out. Please share this out to everywhere around the world, and we can get into the Law of One. Okay, so we were on session 47, question number 5. I think that's what it says in my phone. I backed up to question number 3, just so you have a little bit of context when we get to question number 5 as to where we're going. I was thinking about just going all the way back to the beginning, but the first question or two is just, how can we make what can we do, and how can we make Carla comfortable and that kind of stuff, or how is she doing, right? So I decided, Cassie, welcome. So I decided to, Penny, did I say welcome to you? Yeah, I did. Welcome. So I decided to just skip to question number 2, even though we're talking about the chakras, and we're talking about activation and questions about being in service of self and others and activating certain things, moving into the 4th density outside of here. Everybody always thinks that moving into 4D and 5D is in 3D. There is levels of 3D that are equivalent to the waking of those processes of the knowledge that is entailed into the general education, because where we are here in 3rd dimension is the general ed. This is 1 through 12 grade school. Okay. And when you move into truly the 4th dimension density, that is after this place in this reality, which is actually here on this earth right now that you can't see. No one can, because you're only seeing 3rd dimensional, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd dimensional reality. You can't see the 4th dimension. You can't see the 5th or the 6th or the 7th or the 8th, because you're not part of the frequency yet. So everyone's like, we're moving into 12D. And I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. Right? However, I don't say that out loud, because the concept of the realization of knowledge and the possibility of 12D or 4D or 5D or 6D is supposed to be the expansion of the consciousness to help you to transmute energy and start ascending. So I don't try to tell people that they don't know what they're talking about. I just try to steer them back on track as to what they are actually talking about and give them that. And then, of course, I come across like a know-it-all, and some people's ego gets triggered and they go, that guy, he's a know-it-all. He thinks he knows everything. I'm like, well, I am unveiled. So truly, I do know far, far, far more than 99% of the population of the earth. Just saying that. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that I've hid that from the world. I've hid that from the world for most of my life until just recently. Okay, until literally a psychic called me out in public on a show and said, "You are unveiled." Are you unveiled? I had more than one. So I knew that they were trying to get me to move into this next phase of the coalition down here and the coalition up there, and the council, and what we're supposed to be doing. I was just talking about that off camera today prior to coming on here. Running, as a matter of fact, late trying to get here. Trying to get here and get live on air, and my blood sugar level like plummeted. I don't know what it was, but my hands started shaking because I hadn't eaten since, and I've been talking since I ate breakfast. and literally had to run around and get my mother in the shower and get her dressed and get her food. And then I sat down here and finally got some food in me, and I had to go get a cookie to get extra sugar in my system, because I was literally, my blood sugar level must have been below 70. Right? So it was pretty low. It was low enough to where my hands were like this. They were shaking. I was like, oh, blood sugar level, I'm not feeling good. Blood sugar level really low right now. I need to get some sugar in me. So I ran over and grabbed a couple of Oreos. So if you see anything in my teeth here that I didn't pick out with the floss, I apologize, because I just ate a couple of Oreos and got the sugar under my tongue. Right. Right. So, okay. So, yeah. Right. Penny, you were there. Penny says, I remember when Jamie called you out, you were there when she was like, you're unveiled. How can I do a reading for somebody who's unveiled? What do I tell you? And I'm like, we still don't know everything. There's still stuff that we don't get to know about because of being in 3D. Even unveiled means you're unveiled to everything except for what you wrote down to learn in this lifetime. So you're still veiled slightly. You're unveiled and you can access the Akashic records, but you still can't. Just like a psychic, you can't read yourself. Okay. So even someone who's unveiled, even though we can remember like Jumvalo, using the title Melchizedek, which I want to get into that because a lot of people don't know what that word means. And that's an ancient Hebrew word from a person who was called Melchizedek. And Melchizedek or Melchizedek, I said it was Melchizedek, and everybody corrected me because modern we say Melchizedek. And I was wondering about that, and I was researching ancient Hebrew words and reading, which I don't have here. I have it over by my where I'm sitting in my chair. The God-man, the Bible made flesh, which everybody should read, by the way. Everything I talk about is actually in that book, and I was like, wow, okay. This is kind of cool. I was going to add most of that to my next book, and now I'll just reference that book and let people do a little bit of homework. But they actually did the research on the Melchizedek name and talked about what it actually means. And I'm not going to go into all the details of that because it's used as a title and has been for about 2,000 years. And most people who are unveiled will choose that title of the Melchizedek, meaning unveiled and illuminated one. And it does mean that, but it doesn't just mean that. Ancient Hebrew word meant like Michael. The word Michael comes from Melchizedek. So Michael means one who is like God. And so it means, it's a concept word, ancient Hebrew, like ancient Greek, one word like our words that we give definitions to, like the word run has, like 200 meanings in the dictionary. It's a concept word that means all of these different things depending on the context that you use it in. Melchizedek means either illuminated, someone who is learned, magi, or it means, that's what he who is like God means, someone who is unveiled and, in that concept ideology. So I was researching and I came across that and reading the God-man, and I was like, oh, look, they're talking about Melchizedek. Let's find out what they're saying. And I read that. And I went, oh, wow, okay. So I get where the title comes from, right? So being unveiled is not fun, and I've had to hide it from the world for a long time. And then Jamie Watson-Wolf called me out in public. Penny was there. I think Denise was too at the time. I know Penny was for sure. She just said that. And she was like, you're unveiled. And I was like, oh, okay, that's out. And right after that, on a different psychic, did the same thing. And said, are you unveiled? And I was like, whoa, they don't talk to one another. And I'm like, okay. And they were trying to get me to transition into this next phase of what we're doing down here. Deborah, welcome. Happy Friday. And literally, so being out and now, I'm just like, okay, right. And in my book, they kept telling me to write it in my book and talk about the coalition, especially the council and the coalition down here. And the boots on the ground from the different coalitions. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I've had to hide and use aliases in this lifetime to get this information out to the world and to work behind the scenes. And then they were like, oh, now step into the light. And I was like, what? No, I didn't want to do that. I fought against that for a long time. And those of you who know me, especially like Cassie and Peter Coyle, who's now here, you guys know for sure, because we've had these conversations in private. Because they were literally with the team that I came here with. They rode on the same bus as me to get here. and doing the same job. And Peter was pushing me for years now, 5 years or so, at least, huh, Pete? Maybe even up to 7. I think 7. He's been pushing me to step out more, and kept telling me, we're moving into the next phase, Leo. You got to do this. Come on, step out. I was like, oh no, man, I'm hiding still back here, and still trying to do things undercover. And they just forced me not to. So my book that's coming out later this year, I don't know exactly when. It's done editing, and we're moving into the creating the cover, and which I already know what I'm going to do. I just have to get the concept to the guys and have them work on it. And I have marketers now trying to sell me on marketing packages. So hopefully to get to print, and we'll get things out for you guys, and I'll let you guys know what's going on with that. And that is the reality about reality, returning to the old ways. That'll be out later this year. And so in that, when I was writing it, I kept putting it off to the end. And like I do my show, where I start off at a low level of vibration, and then I pull you out of your comfort zone as it goes further on. And I reward those who stay towards the end, or even just tune in at the end of my show with high level information, as much as I can push. And as much as I can get out, with the universe will allow me to get out without infringing on free will. And reward people for doing that, not because I'm trying to get everybody to stay to the end of my show, but like everything I do that on purpose. The low energy is in the beginning, and the higher energy, the high magic with a K, happens at the end. And so I do this. So in my book, I did the same thing. They wanted me to start the book. I'm like, I'm going to lose everybody. 90% of the planet is going to drop out as soon as I say this. So I saved it for last. And then, so at the end of the book, as you're reading the book, you'll find towards the very end, all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, by the way, 86% of the population of this earth, the souls occupying your bodies, that are 86% of the people that are on here, are not indigenous to this world. Just so you know, that scares people when I throw that at them. Paulie, welcome. Okay, so like I said, share this out. Let me go ahead and do a sound check. We're on session 47. Today is the 90th show to do the Law of One for the second round of interpretation. The first one that I did, I started back in, I remember starting back in 2017, but they say here I started in 2019 in this reality that I'm currently in. The one, but I started in 2017 and went through 2020, and here it says I went through 2021, which is weird, or 2022, which is weird. But I don't remember doing that. But in this reality, I did. So I went through already all 106 sessions once, translating it on a lower level of vibration. And now that we're moving, I was just talking to Cassie about this before we came on the air. Now that we're moving into the age of Aquarius, Baktun 13 is starting. It literally 2012 was the end of Baktun 12 and the beginning of Baktun 13. If you know about the Incan and Mayan and Aztec calendar, the long round, the short round and the long round is reset on 2012, December 22nd, 2012 at the solstice, which actually was the 23rd and a half on 2012. And they usually tell you it's always wrong what they tell you. And that's discussed in God, Man. You guys should read that book. I haven't finished it yet, but I only have about 30 pages left. I'll probably finish it today after the show. But they discuss it in there in a little bit of detail, explaining how the calendar, because of, we have to have leap year because of, and I've talked about that, where the Caesars in Rome, all of them wanted their month and named after them. Augustus, Septus, Octavius wanted the Julius wanted their month to be longer. So they were taking days out of other months to add to their month. So they had 30 days, then 31 days. And so that's why you have 31 days in July and August and September and October, because those Caesars that were ruling then made all of those months 31 days, and they were borrowing because there used to be 13 28-day equal months on the lunar calendar. And when they went to the solar calendar, which is Sol, sun, warlike masculine energy, the Roman calendar, when they transferred everything to that, which is what the people who think they own this world are running it by, because they believe they're descendants of the Luciferians that are Atlanteans, they adopted the Greco-Roman calendar because the Greeks and the Romans were the last ones to conquer the planet, right? So let's be serious. So those people that are still the bankers from that system of control, Egyptian, Greek, Roman, are the ones that are still in control of the planet. So it's their calendar that we go by. So they went to the solar calendar, and then they they changed all the days of the month, and eventually that 1 month they borrowed got eliminated because there was only about 12 days left in it. So they just scattered those days with the rest of the months, and that's why you have like 1 or 2 months. I think there's only February that has 28 days, except for leap year, and all the other ones were separated out to the other months, and so we have 12 months, and some of them are 28, some are 29, some are 30, and some are 31. It used to be 13 28-day equal days. There's 13 full moons and new moons. The moon cycle is still 13 on this earth, and we're supposed to be going by that calendar and not the one that we currently have. And that messed everything up, right, when they did that. So let's move on. I know I was going to make a point there, but you'll see as we go on, and I'll come back to that. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I do this a lot, and then when we hear Ra talking, Ra addresses what I said. So I try to give a little bit of that, but let's get back to where we are here in this reality. Is the grammar school the first place that you are self-aware? So you need to know this so we can get back on the point of Ra. So this is grade school 1 through 12. This earth is this classroom of grade school 1 through 12, and it's general education, right, of the things that you're going to need so that when you move up to college, which is the 4th dimension, beginning stages of college, then you learn wisdom and you learn sacrifice and you learn love and you learn all of the things that you're learning a little bit about down here. So all the things apply here. It depends on whether you're learning in the negative or the positive, by the way. If you're in service to self and you're evil, you're going to learn more about, gluttony and greed and money and power and that sort of thing, control and manipulation when you move up into the 4th. And if you're in service to others, you move up into the 4th, you're going to learn wisdom and then love. And then I think it's love, then wisdom. It's love, then wisdom. That's why when Jesus came here, he was about love because he came from the 4th dimension back down to here. He was actually transitioning into the 5th. So he was moving away from the physical body, and then he came back down to earth in the physical of the third dimension. And then he moved back up, and now he's actually transitioned beyond that already. And he's gone into the 8th dimension. So he doesn't communicate as much with people down here in the physical. He won't come down and appear in front of people, but he will in your mind, he will communicate that way, because that's all they'll do from the 8th dimension is communicate mentally with the lower octave, because the first octave is 0 through 7. The second octave is 8 through 12. Okay, so until you get to 13, that's the 1 and the 3, because then you move back into the creator. That's the 13th octave. So we're in Baktun 12, right? Baktun 13. So we're literally in the stage of moving, but here in this place is general education. Okay, so you're supposed to learn a little bit about all of these concepts from these higher realms. And some people get confused and think that because they're learning a little bit and expanding their consciousness into the knowledge that they might be learning in 4th and 5th, they believe that we're moving into that 4th and 5th, or we're skipping over the 4th dimension and moving right into the 5D. And that's just not possible, right? To move into like what Ra talks about, when Dawn asks about that, he says, how long does it take to go through the 4th dimension to graduate to the 5th dimension? And Ra answers with, from your perspective on Earth, it is 75,000 years or 750,000 years, 750,000 years. Okay, so we can't be in 3D and think we're skipping over 4D, which takes 75,000 years to learn when you're there, and then move into a place that would take like a million years to go through, thinking we're just jumping over one. We're going into 5D already. What you're doing is you're going into the realization of a 5D category that is in the 3rd dimension but is not in the 5th density or dimension at all. So that would be like saying, if you're learning a little bit about math in trigonometry when you're in 11th grade, that doesn't mean that you're in the 4th year of your college. Doesn't mean you're graduating college and getting your doctorate in math already. You're not. You're just learning the basic concept of trigonometry now. And then when you go to college, you're going to learn higher trigonometry that you can't learn down here, because you have to learn the basics before you have to learn how to stand up and walk before you can learn how to run. Okay, so if you're in a general education class, you know that, right? I'm taking trig, But then when you get to college and you're taking this advanced stuff, I know because I have two nephews that are doing that, one of which is probably going to go to work for Skunk Works and NASA, not a joke. And the other one is about to go into college. Okay. And they're freaking geniuses. They're learning the math because when you have that math skill, they're going to push you into the higher learning, but it's not what you normally get in a regular high school. This is a regular high school, so you get to look at what it is that you're going to be learning more of when you graduate. And people get confused by that concept. It's the same. You'll see where I'm going with this when we get into Raw. It's the same when you have access to the Akashic records. I was just talking about this off camera, and people get confused because they see things from that first person perspective when they're watching the film footage of that, and they think I was that person. I am that person. And the truth is, most of the time you're not. You're just accessing that memory. But sometimes you were. And on a high enough level, when you go up high enough, you are. And that is where some people get a little bit stuck, like Jim Carrey. I don't know him personally, but it seems that he's a little stuck because he has learned about this and he's moved into that phase where he says, I was playing a character. I got to play Jim Carrey, and I'm no longer that. I don't see myself as, this was just a quote I saw online of his, I don't see myself as Jim Carrey anymore. I see myself as the universe having the experience of Jim Carrey. And that's true, but when you're taking on the persona of I am the universe having this experience, that's still ego. Because if you weren't, then you would acknowledge that we are the universe having. But then when a person starts referring to themselves down here as we, that's a little weird, depending on the context of the way they say that. So I don't know him personally, so I don't know if he was saying it that way so that it wouldn't get people into thinking, well, he's referring to himself in the third person now, because I'm sure that's what people would say if he had done that. So I can't vouch for it, but I'm using it as an example. So I'm not saying that Jim Carrey is stuck, because I think Jim Carrey, who everyone thinks is crazy, is very awake and has a very, very good understanding spiritually about what's going on in the universe. And people everywhere think he's nuts because of his ideology. And that usually tells you how much you know when you are actually awake. The more people who believe that you're crazy because you speak like I do, the more you don't care that they think you're crazy, because you're not. And then they tell you, well, crazy people don't think they're crazy. So he's probably crazy. Okay. So ego gets triggered and ego thinks I'm crazy. And I'm not concerned with that. Anybody who thinks that I'm crazy and tunes me out, I'm not concerned with, right? Honestly, I'm not here to be the Christ. I'm not here to save everyone's soul by sacrificing my soul and dying for your sins. That was done. Okay. I've made my sacrifice, and I am, and all wanderers are making their sacrifice by being down here to do this. We're living by Jesus's way. The way to heaven is through me. We're doing that. We're living that and working here, trying to do the same thing and sacrificing the idea, not our immortal soul to go to hell, but we're sacrificing ourselves to be here and maybe not wake up and remember who we are. That's a sacrifice of you're stuck here with everybody else and you don't know it. And you knew that when you got here, when you signed on, you said, that's what I want to do. Yeah, I want to go down there and not even remember who I am, and hope that I remember enough to wake up somehow to do something good for the people of the earth and help them, to assist them to wake up. And if you live 10 lifetimes and never wake up, you're willing to do that. That's the sacrifice that Jesus was showing by doing what he did, and the other people on this earth doing the same thing the other 11 times. Okay. And that might trigger some of you out there, and that's just the way it is. It is what it is. If you're going to be triggered by anything, you had to decide to put that roadblock up ahead of time and go, if someone says this, I'm going to get mad. You had to say that ahead of time. And you have to choose that. So if I say something that offends you, it's because you have a trigger, because your ego is getting triggered and you're listening to the ego and you're getting angry with me and go, this guy's an idiot. Doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm out of here. I know more than that guy knows. That's the way you figure. That's the way you think. Have a good day. Okay. So let me do a sound check and we'll move right into the law of one. Let me know if you guys can hear it okay, and I'll turn the sound up. And we'll move on from there into the law of one and get started. Okay. But like I said, share this out. I didn't have time to share it in a bunch of places, so please do that. Okay. Let me go ahead and press play on Raw, and we'll get started with question number 3 in session number 47. Question 3.
47.3 Questioner. We chose the values of, or you were given the values of, better than 50% service to others for fourth density positive and better than 95% service to self for fourth density negative social memory complexes.
Well, see, Rick, that's funny that you say that. Thank you, Peter. That's funny. Rick says maybe we're not many, but one. Well, that's what it is. We are here as many individuals because this is the first place that you are aware, self-aware of yourself. So then we are many because you're self-aware. I do, I think, therefore I am. As you ascend from that, that's why your thinking is accurate. As you start to ascend, you start to think maybe we aren't many, maybe we are one, right? Cassie, thank you. So that's exactly what you're supposed to ascend to. If you're in service to self, you don't give a crap about that and shut up, Leo. I'm me. I'm the one. I'm in charge. If you're ascending as in service to others, then the idea in unlocking that knowledge of exactly what you said, maybe, which is a great way that you put that. I'm going to put that up on the screen, right? Maybe, right? Did that go up on the screen? It's taking its sweet time and not working the way I want it to work, right? There it goes. No, and then I hit the wrong one. See, everything moved, right? I didn't see that. The screen moved and I didn't see it. And I thought that was where you had said that. So that's all right. I'll find it and put it up right here. It is. The screen jumped because somebody said something and I clicked on the wrong one, right? Maybe we're not one, but many, but one. Well, that's where we're supposed to move into that. And as you expand your consciousness to that possibility, just like Ross said in the very beginning, when you look at another person, realize you're looking at the face of the creator. When you look in the mirror and see your own reflection, realize you're looking into the face of the creator. And that's what that concept is what you're supposed to be thinking like at all times. And that's the do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and judge not lest you be judged. It's the same parable. It's the same lesson, that you're supposed to treat other people the way that you would want to be treated, because you're supposed to expand your consciousness to the ideology that we are, in fact, reflection of each other. We are one, and that me judging them is me judging myself. So once you start acting that way and thinking that way, that expands your consciousness to the hive mind complex, because as you start to break down the walls of trust with other people, a twin brother or a brother or sister, a spouse, really good friends, when you start trusting somebody, that's when you start finishing each other's sentences and you get to know each other. I know what they like. They know what I like, because you're trusting enough of those individuals to open up yourself to them and to allow them to see who you truly are. And that is what allows you to bond on a spiritual level. And you're supposed to learn that in a physical way down here like that, to expand your consciousness. And then when you move into starting to learn and ascending towards the fourth dimension, the concept of a hive mind complex starts to come into play by saying we, not I, not me, but we, not they, but us. And once you start saying those things, that's just like if you're married to somebody and they always say my kids, even if you're standing next to them, that's a person who's ego. They're not saying our kids. They're not including you. It's my kids. So my marriage, my house, right? What I do. Anyone who talks like that, you need to look at that if they're in your life. If you're supposed to be an equal partner, why are they not saying that out loud? Because they don't think it internally. So you have to start setting those boundaries with people in regular life. And if they don't give you your due credit, even if you demand it, you need to start making decisions in your life. And that's why I've posted about that in memes, because those people, you're outgrowing that person because you're thinking in the context of we, and they're not. So you need to really be careful of people early on, and they don't teach this. And that's why people get into relationships and then later end up divorcing in relationships, because they're not learning what they need to learn about one another before they get into the relationship, to where they're sharing things as a we. So then other people try to discourage you from doing that. Here in the United States, men treat other men like crap, and women do too. Where you got to go check with your wife, bro. You henpecked. No, I'm married. It's a we now. I have to check. I can't just make decisions. I'm going to go and hang out with you guys without talking to her about it, or I'm going to meet you for dinner without talking to her about that. And if she doesn't check with you, you got a problem. So that is, you become a unit now. That's so those concepts, the marriage, the dating, all of those concepts are supposed to be there for you to expand your consciousness and expand your trust and move into. You're learning a little bit in this 1 through 12 grade. You're learning general education that you're going to need further later on when you move up from here. And the hive mind complex is something that you move into the catalyst for that expansion of thought that it's possible starts here. And then as you move up, that becomes more and more apparent until eventually you become a hive mind complex like the Borg in Star Trek, to where you're still individual. You can focus on your individuality still, but you still can hear the whole as one. And as you move closer back to the source, that goes away. Eventually you become a hive mind complex, and that hive mind complex moves into another hive mind complex and starts again. So you move from, say, our solar system here on the Earth, you start learning that concept. You move from this solar system, or from this, solar system, to the galaxy. And then there's a hive mind complex of the galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. Okay. And then eventually you blend with that entire galaxy, and all the species and all of the life forms in there are one hive mind. Then this galaxy starts to blend with this universe and all the other galaxies, and that person, single personality that makes up all of those galaxies, becomes the hive mind complex of the universe. And then this universe is attached to a bunch of other universes, and that continues, and we don't know how big that gets. So it goes from solar system to galaxy to universe to multiverse, and we don't know what's beyond that. Okay, we just can't know that down here. Okay, and to get to that, by the time you get to that, when you get to the fifth, going into the sixth density, is the hive mind complex of the Milky Way galaxy. Okay, so that's moving into the universe now. But when you move into the universal mind, is crossing over from the seventh into the eighth, and no one down here gets to know anything about what's going on up there. That is the other end of this octave, the lower octave, and that is akin to this all being the lower three chakras. And the eighth being the sixth chakra in our body, being the heart chakra. And then everything above that is the upper three chakras in the physical beingness of the universe. Do you see? As above, so below, as within, so without. Okay, or as below, so above, as within, so without, the way it's actually supposed to be said. Okay, so we don't get to know down here, and I can't even express to you anyways, because there aren't any vocal words to express the concepts of what I can see. Even looking now, what I can see there, it just does not. We're too far down. We are literally the first place that you're, as a soul, a baby soul, is self-aware. So the concept of what goes on in the eighth dimension and above that is so alien to us. It would be like looking at an ant and trying to communicate with an ant. The ant doesn't even aware that you're there until you almost crush it to death. And then it has no idea. Is the ant sitting there going, oh no, God is mad at me, right? The ant's not self-aware, so it doesn't have that thought process. So all the ant knows is that something almost crushed me and I don't know what it is. And I'm afraid because it was very big and I have to run. Instinct. Okay, so if you're trying to communicate with an ant and explain what's going on in the third dimension and how it works to an ant, try explaining that to an animal who's already a second dimensional being about to transition to being self-aware. They'll look at you and go, huh? And you're like, well, there's this political overtones, and there was this soul that came from God down to earth, and the dog's going to be like, huh? And the cat by this time is going to be bored with you and looking at, okay? Do you see? So that's just one level below us. And you can't communicate this what you already know here in the third. What makes you think that you can understand what's going on 4 levels above where you are, or 5 levels above where you are, or 6 levels above where you are? Can't. There's just no way of communicating that. Okay. All right. Let's continue with Raw. Welcome, Joanna. Welcome. All right. So let's continue here with this question.
Do these two values correspond to the same rate, shall I say, of vibration? Ra, I am Ra. I perceive you have difficulty in expressing your query. We shall respond in an attempt to clarify your query. The vibratory rates are not to be understood as the same in positive and negative orientations. They are to be understood as having the power to accept and work with intelligent infinity to a certain degree or intensity. due to the fact that the primary color, shall we say, or energy blue is missing from the negatively oriented system of power. The green/blue vibratory energies are not seen in the vibratory schedules or patterns of negative fourth and fifth rates of vibration. The positive, upon the other hand, shall we say, has the full spectrum of true color time/space vibratory patterns and thus contains a variant vibratory pattern or schedule.
Right. So now you see why I was talking about that and the difference between people in service to self and in service to others, and what you can access and what knowledge you start to gain as you're accessing that. So, and you see what I'm saying, in the general education thereof, right? So, like I said before, show this out. So now you see why I was on that rant that I was on early on, because I wanted you to have that preface before we got to that, so that you kind of understood a little bit more about what we're always talking about right there. Let's continue. And I was laughing because what Penny said, all of a sudden I feel like the ant, and that explains why sometimes, half the time, I feel like that. No, that is the feeling that you get here. And as you expand your consciousness and your mind gets blown by something, when you go, wait a minute, and you get this epiphany about how the universe works, then you go, oh man, I'm like this little ant and I really know nothing. That's the concept of Socrates when he said, the more you know, the more you realize that you know nothing. Because you feel so small compared to the universe when you realize how big the universe is. When you start to unlock and learn the concept of infinity, infinite wisdom, infinite knowledge, infinite love, you realize the infinitesimal amount of what you know currently. And then you feel like that ant comparatively to everything else. Stephanie, welcome aboard. Like I said, show this out. Let's get some more people in here. All right, let's continue.
Capable of doing fourth density work. This is the criterion for harvest. 47.4 questioner. Did you say that blue was missing from fourth
I just put on my glasses and Cassie said that. What is the name of the book about the Bible and the USA that you were reading? That name of that is God-Man. So on the cover of the book, let me go get it. Okay, I'm going to leave you guys here for a second. I'm going to get the cover. I'm going to get the book and bring it over here and put it on camera so you can see what I'm talking about. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, so there's different versions of this with different covers of the book, but I'll put it up here on the screen so you can read it. Here's the authors of it, right? Let me put that there. I have to make sure I can see it, right? That's the authors that wrote the book. There's the cover that I have. It's called God-Man. Let me put that up a little closer on the screen. God-Man, the World Made Flesh. And this book is literally, if you're Western Judeo-Christian, if you know anything about the Old Testament, the Jewish Bible, the the Hebrew Bible, or the Christian Bible, or the what is it called? The Quran. If you know anything about those are all based on the Book of Moses and the books of Moses in the Old Testament, and that Apocrypha, the Hebrew Apocrypha, and they literally. In my book that I have coming out, the reality about reality, returning to the old ways. This book is about that, is literally the same. And I hadn't read it until I had the book for a year or two, but hadn't read it. I just started reading it a few days ago, and I have about 30 pages left, and it's not really a long book. Mine isn't either. It's going to be like 100 pages. Literally, it explains and breaks down for you what the original concept of what all the stuff from the Bible actually meant, including the Jesus character, the John character, and what the ancient Egyptians, Romans, and Greeks knew about, and every culture for that matter, which I talk about in my book that'll be coming out later this year, that literally what the ancients knew about spirituality. And this doesn't tell when that went away. I talk about that in my book, when that stopped and when the evil people took control of the narrative and got that out. They do discuss it a little bit because they talk about Constantine and the different councils, the Council of Nicaea, when they took like 86 books out of the Bible and made the current Bible the way they did. And that's where the Hebrews claim that Christianity was invented by the Romans, because Constantine was a Roman who had converted to Christianity, and he wanted to solidify Jesus as the Trinity. and they took out any books that didn't paint that narrative out of the Bible. And but the Hebrews don't even believe in the New Testament at all, because they believe that only their people can be they're the chosen race. So if you're not Hebrew, you're not going to heaven anyway. And that's what, every religion believes, that all the other religions are fake. But this discusses that in the terms and shows you by breaking down even the spelling of Hebrew words of what the word Jesus meant and what the word Christ meant, and what the Christ within and everything that is there still in the Bibles across the world, and what their teachings are. And this is what I talk about as well. That's why I didn't know this, and somebody told me about the book. I learned about it somewhere and I bought it, and it's been sitting on my bookcase for almost 2 years now. And I started going through and reading some of the books that I had, and I was like, I haven't read these books, I'm going to pull them out. And I pulled this out last week and went, why didn't I read this book? I should read this book. And I started reading, and I was like, I'm glad I didn't read this before I started writing my book, because it probably would have influenced some of what I wrote in my book. People are probably going to accuse me that of anyway. Once they know I'm reading this book, they'll go, he's just got that from God-Man. No, I didn't. God-Man just came out. I just bought this. It was published in 2020 or 2022. So literally, let me see when it was published here. 2022. So I bought this since 2022. This is 2024, right? And I wrote my book last year. So I had this book, but I never read it, right? So some people will say, because I talk about it, well, it's just influenced from that book. I didn't read it. The same thing with the Law of One. I was talking about the way before I even read the Tao Te Chi, which means the way. And people were telling me, that's in the Tao Te Chi, you should read it. I read that and went, wow, okay. I came to the same conclusion. The Law of One, I was talking about the laws of the universe, and I had somebody on my show live go, Leo, that's the Law of One. I'm like, what is that? That was back in 2017. I didn't even know what the Law of One was. And she said, here, and she gave me a link to the videos that on YouTube that I did the Law of One on, until I switched to doing it the way I'm doing it now. I was using the Law of One from Muffy Moose, which is still up, Muffy Moose on YouTube, but they monetized their page. So because of that, I stopped using them, because it takes you to commercials every few minutes. And I would have to, while the show's going, I would have to go click and turn off the commercial and then replay it. So I didn't want to do that. Then I started doing from the Law of One, and they did the same thing. So now I had to go to lawofone.info, which is the LL Research's stuff. I started doing from theirs, but they did the same thing and monetized. So then I went to their site and I just copy and paste the original text from the transcripts that they wrote the book from. And then I just transfer those into audio on my own program. And that's what I'm playing for you now. But I didn't know what it was until she said, that's the Law of One. You need to look it up. And then I've read the 6 books. There was 7, because there was one that was about UFOs, then 6 that are on the Law of One. And then I said, I have to start breaking this down for people to understand. And I did it session 1 through 106, and finished in the reality that I was in until the shift last year in May, or year before that in May. Before that big shift where a lot of us shifted into this reality, the reality that I was in, I finished a year earlier than I did in this reality, but that doesn't matter, because your kidneys are in a different place and your heart's in a different place in this reality than they were the one we came from. My heart is slightly over to the left of my chest, and in this reality, and you Google that, they tell you it's in the dead center, right? But that's not where it is. It's actually over here. But in this reality, people over here think that it's in the middle of your body, and it's not. And my kidneys are not 2 inches below my rib cage up under my lungs. My kidneys are just above my butt crack on the lower back. And so if you remember both of those things, then you came with us when the shift happened. That's not a bad thing. The shifts are happening because we're actually doing that. I don't want to get too involved in that, but that is the temporal war, right? Christopher knows that. Stephanie, welcome. Did I say hi to you? I don't think I said hi to you, and I just looked up and saw your name was here, right? Yeah, okay. So Stephanie said, I go to a non-denominational Christian church. It's a mission. I love God. I love community, love world. Oops, now the screen's moving on me. I'm studying the Torah, good for you, and the Quran and the Kabbalah, good for you. I'm all over the place. No, that's okay. I'm a minister. I have 4 titles from 4 different religions, 2 Christian religions, because I was knighted by the Holy Roman Catholic Church. So I am a knight with a sir title, and that gives me a minister title through them, but I can't be called father because you have to go to their seminary to get the father title. They won't let you do it unless you go to their seminary. Well, I didn't want to go to their seminary, which they wanted me to do, because I don't want to swear off sex or women, because I don't believe that that's what Jesus was trying to say. Jesus was married to Mary, whether you like to hear that or not. And she had his child, whether you like to know that or not. And then I'm a minister through the Universal Life Church in Phoenix, Arizona. When I was in Arizona, I went to that and got my license in 2016. So I have a ministry title that is worldwide. I also have a title that is the Merlin title as a Druid that I got from 18 years of my life studying under my father to get that title. So that one was the hardest one that I got. That one, and then I'm, of course, in New Zealand, the Jedi Temple in New Zealand, I'm a Jedi Master in the Jedi Temple, which is not recognized in England or America as an official religion, but the rest of the planet is. It's already recognized as an official religion, and you can get dog tags that say that, and that is your religion in most countries, including the United States and England, even though they don't officially say, well, there's no church here, so we don't officially recognize that. That's from a movie. But it has become a worldwide religion. So I have 4 titles, and I don't teach Christianity, is my point, Stephanie. And I don't teach just that. I'm a theologian. I have learned and read about all religions. And we were just talking off camera today before the show about the Hittites and knowledge that was just found in Turkey not too long ago, because there was like 50,000 scrolls from the Hittites that they found that dates back 5,500 years from now. And they found a scroll there, or a stone, some tablet, that the Hittites found that they didn't translate, that it's older than that. And I just linked it in the Law of One chat for the class to look at and read the little article about it. And some of us are going to research that further, because we're curious as to what that information, where it came from and when, because we now know through science that there was a societal structure that ended 75,000 years ago, that their home base was Turkey, what is modern day Turkey. So if the Hittites, who lived in modern day Turkey prior to this cycle of life 5,000 years ago, at the beginning of the cycle, they found something that they don't know whether, because it is a form of cuneiform, which the Hittites used and the Mesopotamians used, and everybody in that region over there from Turkey heading, southwest, southeast, except for the Arcadians, where the Greeks owned, with all the Greek stuff, but ancient stuff is a cuneiform language, but it's one that they didn't understand. We know that. They know that. So we know that there is a society that's even older. So I don't teach spirituality. That's why my book is called The Reality About Reality, Returning to the Old Ways. And the book that I'm talking about today, God Man, that I just mentioned, because Cassie wanted me to tell you guys about it, because her and I were talking about it. And I was reading from it to her before I came on air. Her and I had a 3-hour conversation before I came on air here. About spirituality and moving into the next phase in our coalition down here on Earth, which Peter is a part of, in moving into the next phase, where we are actually telling you some of the shit that I've been telling you that we've been hiding from you for a long time, because people weren't ready for it. So good for you that you're open-minded, is my point, open-minded enough to be going to a spiritual way where they're allowing you, encouraging you, and letting you learn about and read about many different ways, because the ancient ways, which is about what my book is about, is returning to that. And what this book is about, God Man, and what this book is about is the same. It's telling you, breaking down the Western Judeo-Christian Bible, and showing you what it meant, and what the words mean in Hebrew and Sanskrit. So you're going back now 2,000 to 3 to 4,000, almost 5,000 years in the knowledge of spirituality in this book, where they're explaining to you what the ancients knew about spiritual practice. And that is not being taught to you in most of the modern religions, period, including Taoism and Hinduism. Although Hinduism and Taoism and Sikhism, well, not Sikhism, but the Taoism and the Hinduism, they're actually, in Buddhism, they didn't get corrupted by the West. The ancient Eastern philosophical thoughts didn't get corrupted. So even though they're religions, they're still more of a spiritual practice. than they are an Orthodox go to church religion. But the evil people are trying to do that to everyone. And when they do, they wipe out, like the Constantine did in the councils of Nicaea, wiped out 86 books from the Western Judeo-Christian Bible currently that you have a copy of if you pick it up. There's 86 books that were taken out. We know of a lot of them because we're finding them. The Dead Sea Scrolls unlocked a bunch, and the Hittites, 50,000 texts that were found in modern day Turkey, dating back 54 to 5,700 years. That's, I put in the Law of One chat yesterday, and it's still up there. You can look at it if you're in that chat on Messenger. And that talks about another scroll that they literally didn't translate themselves. I also have mentioned the Colburn Bible, which is in Scotland, the first 7 books of the Colburn Bible. The Scottish monks got from scrolls from monks who came out of Egypt with Moses during the Exodus, and they got copies of those scrolls and brought them back to Scotland and added them to their Bible. So the first 7 books of the Colburn Bible are literally date back to more than 5,000 years ago. And when you ask the Egyptians about those scrolls and where they came from, they tell you they came from an older society that lived here prior to the pre-dynastic society of Egypt. And we're living in the post-dynastic society. So the scrolls that are in the Colburn Bible are quite possibly 75,000 years old. Okay, so the information that is in those scrolls is far older, and we're finding that out on the world. But most of this information was held from us, and we didn't get to know about it. Yeah, right. This is. I bought this book a couple years ago, like I said, when it came out, and I never read it. It's only 155 pages long. Yeah, 155 pages long. Like my book, when it comes out, I think it's going to be 100 pages. I tried not to, and I believe they tried not to as well, overwhelm people with a book that's, most people will say, when you're writing a novel, it's got to be 1,000 pages long. I can go on. Look at me. I can go on for 1,000 pages if I want to. But it's better to hit you with knowledge. When I read my book after the editing, and I was proofing my book, and I read it from cover to cover, I went, oh my God, anyone who does what I just did, their brain's they're going to explode, or it's going to just jack them up. And you're going to have one of those moments where you realize, you have this epiphany and you go, whoa, I just lost my mind. I'm like, they're going to pop. Anybody who reads my book from cover to cover without stopping is going to pop. So same thing with this. If you sit down, I have not. Okay. And everything that's in here, there's only been a few things that I've learned that I didn't already know. And it's still blowing me away. So I actually recommend it. I don't even know these people, but I recommend this book. And it's funny because my little brother's in a theological college currently to get his pastor license, and I guess he's going to get a doctorate. I'm not sure if it's going to be a doctorate, but he's at least getting a bachelor's degree in theology. And he's brought this up to me, and I was sitting with the book next to me. I had just been reading it. I set it down to answer the phone. And my brother says one of my professors was talking about this book called The God Man, and I said, God Man, the world made flesh. I guess that's what it's the subtitle, The World Made Flesh. And he goes, yeah, you've heard of it? I said, I own it, bro. It's sitting here next to me. And he goes, you serious? I said, I'm reading it currently. I said, I just set it down to answer the phone and talk to you. And he was like, is it any good? I said, bro. I said, you need to know this because I know that your theological college is from a Western Judeo-Christian standpoint, and they're teaching you Christianity first. And these are the conversations that he and I have where every time he starts saying, Jesus is my Savior, my God, my Lord and Savior, and this, and then I throw the little kibosh to his being converted to reborn again as a Jesus is my Lord and Savior. And I'm like, well, yeah, but Jesus was trying to tell you about the Christ within, and you're supposed to understand that, and all that was taken out of the Bible, and you should look into that. So he's got an open enough mind to where he doesn't just go, no, you don't know what you're talking about, brother, because he knows that I'm already a theologian, right? So I'm like, you have to break down the barriers because they're going to teach you from a slanted point of whatever religion they're trying to push on you. And you need to push past that and start reading on your own all these other religions. And that's why I was getting to what you were saying, where you're learning this stuff. Good for you. And I tell everybody all the time to learn as much as you can about all religions, because you're going to find that if you learn enough about them, that they are all the same, but they were changed and turned into businesses. And now they're a Starbucks where they're trying, or a Walmart there, or a McDonald's, depending on where you are in the world, or a Domino's. They're trying to sell you on their product, and they want you in their seats and paying a tithing to them. That whole 10% tithing doesn't mean anything to do with go to a church and give them 10% of your money. Doesn't mean that at all. It's return the 10% of the oil that is within you to the one true creator. And when you do that, that's when it's crucified. That's the crucifixion and the anointing of John, which is the oil being anointed, and then being the light of the world, which is when the oil returns to the optic thalamus in your brain, goes through the claustrum, where we get Santa Claus from, and goes through the claustrum and illuminates your third eye. And when that happens, that is the tithing being returned. That is the 10% that you're returning. And that illumination then fires throughout your brain, and every single cell in your brain is illuminated, and you move up spiritually, and it illuminates you. And then that illuminates every single cell in your body, and it actually rejuvenates your cells. So people who used to live on this earth for 10,000 years, 1,000 years, it was because they were going by the old ways and living the proper way, the way Jesus was trying to teach, the way Muhammad was trying to teach, the way Moses was trying to teach. And since those people were here, now in the last 1,500 years, 1,500 years, that has been changed. And it has been changed to take away that knowledge from you. That is what's going on. That's what they discuss in this book, and that's what I discuss in my book, because it's now time that we're supposed to be getting this knowledge out to you guys to let you know. We've been hiding from this for generations because they would kill us every time we tried to talk about it. They can't stop us anymore. We have moved into Baktun 13. We are now into the age of Aquarius that started 2012, December 23rd. 24th was actually the solidification when Baktun 13, according to the Aztecs and Mayan calendar, ended. Baktun 12 ended and Baktun 13 began. That is moving from Mars to Venus, from war, the god of war, to the goddess of love, moving from the Kundalini energy, the masculine warlike energy, to the Kunda buffer energy. Most of you don't even know that term, which is the feminine goddess energy. The age of Aquarius is the goddess energy, and this Earth and this entire solar system has actually moved into a phase where this way of life, being controlled by the 1% evil people that are running this planet who think they own it, their way of life is dying. And this is why you see all the craziness going on around you in the world, because they're fighting for their lives to try and put everybody back to sleep. There's my soapbox for the day. And let's move back into the law of one before I get some of you running away because I triggered you and talked about politics. He must be a Republican. He must be a Democrat. You'll get triggered either way because I sound like I'm your enemy if you're living in the lower three chakras. If you're not, everything I just said to you, you're going, huh? Wow. And if it triggered you in a positive way, like an activation, and you were like, what did he just say? That was cool. That's why you're here. You are here because I am a beacon, one of them. I'm not the only one. I am a beacon for people who are waking up to you for some reason go, well, I got to click on that guy's show. Why? I don't know. I just feel like I should click on this. That was like Peter in the audience, Peter Coyle. I have no idea how long he and I have been friends. And I don't know, but we've been friends for thousands of years. But on this earth, in this life, he doesn't know, and I don't know how we became friends on Facebook. One day, I remember being up at like 2 a.m. for me, and he's in Ireland, so he's on UK time. So it was like 8 a.m. for him. And he was live, and he was talking live, and somehow I was already friends with him, and I don't know how. And I got a notification that he went live, and I clicked on there, and I started talking to him, and he started talking to me on his live. So I started typing to him and we're having a conversation. And then we just were drawn to each other. And we just continued to have a conversation. And then I didn't see him for about 2 weeks. And then literally in my coalition, we were having a conference and there was a video call. When I got on the video call, Peter was in there. And the person said, do you know this guy? And I said, hey, yeah, we're friends on Facebook, although I don't know how. Peter, how did we become friends on Facebook? And then he said, I don't know. I have no idea. So then she was like, well, where do you know him from? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I know him. And she was like, well, okay, yeah, you guys came on the same bus. We all came here together, but where do you know him on this earth from? And I said, Facebook. She goes, no, you know him from before that. And I was like, do I? And then I found out, and I'm going to out Peter, but he's okay with that knowledge. Peter is an actor, and he was in the television series on History Channel, Vikings. And he was in almost every single shot. He was literally standing next to the king or the queen at all times and went into combat and was there all the time and was on the show and it even spoke. And I've watched that show from beginning to end. I was a big fan and she knew that. And she was like, you know, Peter, you just don't know, you realize. And then when she said that, he put up a picture of him in his outfit on set. And I was like, holy crap, bro. I've watched you for like 4 years on the television show and didn't even know, but he and I were already friends on Facebook and I have no idea to this day. Somehow we ended up friends. Well, now we realize that we've been together in many lifetimes and came here together and we were supposed to be. And so I don't even know how I've been on Facebook since 2012. I don't know when he got on Facebook. Or actually, I wasn't on Facebook before that. I think it was 2009, but I started really posting and created Ancient Aliens Worldwide, which has 300,000 members now. And I created that in 2012. So I've been posting on Facebook for a very long time. But he and I have been friends on Facebook for all that whole time. And I don't know how we became friends. Don't remember when, but I know why, right? There's Peter laughing about it. So yeah, but I was like, oh my God, I watched that TV program, bro. You are on that show. And so if you look at his page, you'll find the pictures with him and the other guys in the movie that are people that you know. And he's got pictures with him. He was on the show. Okay. So let's continue. So getting back to Raw, and then I'll start playing that again. So Raw is showing here how the progression of what you start to learn and what you can learn as you move into the concept of the hive mind complex and moving into the fourth density. Okay, so let's continue with that, right? Let me see if you guys are asking any questions, maybe not. So let's continue with that way. What it was this Hawkeye says, I asked 3 different people over the years that I want to find my blood type. Or doctors, but they just ask why, and you can actually, Rick, you can there's a test. I don't have one right in front of me, but I could show it to you. There's one you can buy for like $20, even here in the United States, that you can do. That's actually in this country FDA approved to do your blood type, and you get it, and it's just this little kit. And in the kit, there's this solution and this little page with these dots on it. And you take the solution and you drop it in the little dots, and then you prick your finger, and then you dip you get blood on your finger, and you get it on the tip of this little beaker, and you drop your blood into these blots, and then you just sit and wait for it, and they will change colors, and then they have a little chart that tells you. And I decided to do mine because I wasn't sure what my blood type was. And I was told by people that I have type O negative. So I wanted to see if it really worked. And I did it. And it said I had type O negative. And then I checked with my doctor and they said, yeah. And then I checked with my ex-wife and she was like, yeah, because when we got married, we had to get a blood test. So if you were married once, Rick, I don't know if Australia requires that, but America requires that. So if you got married and your country requires a blood test, it's on record in your marriage license, your marriage record. If it's not, you have to get a doctor, and that always costs money. So you can do that kit. You can order it from the United States. I'm sure they'll mail it to Australia if your country allows it to go in, because your country has some weird rules. But I'm sure you could get a kit in your country as well. If not, let me know, and I'll order one, and I'll mail it to you, because I don't think they'll x-ray it to find out whether and it won't do any damage to it. So if they won't let you do it, let me know. You and I will talk, and I'll mail you one when you get settled over at Uluru, or before if we have to. They're only like $20 over here in the United States, American dollars. So that'll be about 22, 23 Australian. So you could do that and test it yourself and get a really good idea. It'll tell you what your DNA is, what your blood type is. And I mean, you have Australian DNA in you, so there is a possibility that you could be, a negative DNA, or you could be O positive, O negative, AB negative, A negative, because you're in Australia and the Aborigines don't have any African blood. Okay. Yes, so yes, okay, think that's perfect. I was going to stop myself from going there, Cassie. I was going to get back into Raw, but no. Cassie says, Leo, when you get a chance, can you answer the RH negative and how it pertains to spirituality, please? Yes. So, the first, in physicality, the RH negative factor means you don't have any African DNA. That's what that means. Okay, so the out of Africa theory. Let me explain the theory of the DNA, and then I'll get into the spirituality of it. So the theory is that people that are African say, well, all of life was founded in Africa. So they have this theory that's called the out of Africa theory. Stephen and Evan Strong from Australia, who are personal friends of mine, I've worked with them for years now, 8-10 years now. And we talk. I just talked to Evan about 2 weeks ago. And they had looked into their origins. What is it called? They're going to hate me because I can't think of what they're called, or what their podcast and their and ancient origins. They looked into the DNA of Aborigines because they have Aboriginal DNA, and like Stephen Strong is like a quarter Aborigine. And so then Evan would be an eighth, and depending on whether his mother had any as well. And they looked at the Aboriginal people because they're very dark, like Africans, but they're a different color black than the Africans are. But they look European. They don't look African at all. Their bone structure is they look like black versions of European people of this, only very dark. So they said, that's weird, because if they came out of Africa, well, where do they get the darkness from? Is that from Africa? And the Aborigines say, no, we don't have any African DNA. So they started looking into that, and they created the out of Australia theory, where they started looking at what we call the hobbits, the Denisovans, and realized that those people don't have any African DNA. So they started testing Europeans. So the Australians started testing themselves, and most of Australian people are European, okay, because it was originally a penal colony from England. And so anybody that was in prison, they would move them on to Australia and basically leave them there, and you just have to guard the coast because you're out there in the middle of nowhere. And eventually they overthrew the English government and created their own government that is now Australia. Okay, so those are European people. So they started testing them. Then they went to Europe and started testing the European people. And when they did that, they realized that there is a definite negative factor in DNA, RH negative factor in the DNA of people around the world. Okay, 10% of the population of this earth has RH negative factor, and that means there's no African DNA. I have done through Ancestry.com, I've, spit on a stick and sent it into Ancestry.com and was tested, and I do not have any African DNA. All of my DNA is European. Okay, I do not have any. So my people, all the way, however back far but I can trace my DNA back to the year 990. So I can trace my DNA almost back 2,000 years, has no African DNA. So they found that 75,000 years ago, there's that number again. I was talking about a civilization that ended 75,000 years ago. 75,000 years ago, there was a meteor strike on the planet that ended the people that were living here at the time. And the people on the planet died out, except for we have now know 3 pockets of humans. Those in Madagascar and South Africa, those in Norway and Finland and Sweden, and those in Australia. Those 3 peoples are currently responsible for the entire population of this earth. Okay, the population of the planet went down to about 20,000 humans, and then since then they have repopulated this entire earth. And that's why, if you look, you have a lot of people in Europe that are Aryan, a lot of people in Africa that are Aryan, and then you have a lot of people that are Polynesian, and those people look very similar to Australians. Okay, so Polynesia, that's where Australia is, in southern Polynesia. North of Australia is the Americas. Okay, so all of the land that was there, that it was Lyra, which is now gone because of the flood that happened about 5,000 years ago. those people were the ocean of the Pacific Ocean was really just rivers on the outskirts, and they were able to sail across very easily, and they bred with all those people. And now the peaks of the tallest mountains are Hawaii, Fiji, Samoa, and Australia and Indonesia. Those are the peaks of the mountains that made up that landmass. So those people bred there, which is where you get all of a sudden the Americas, an influx of people. People didn't want to believe that. And they looked at Native Americans and said they were from South America, so they're Polynesian. And they just found here in the United States in 2012 that there was Native Americans that were here prior to the ones that were bred with the Spanish, the Incas and the Mayans, and they were actually European. Okay, so the Europeans did move over here. The point of all of this is the type O negative or the type A negative, B negative, anything that has the Rh negative factor and what that represents. Now, I had to tell you that physicality to get you to where it is spiritually, because the DNA that is and makes up the Rh negative factor on this earth is actually only 10,000 years old. But the people that came from Norway, Finland, and Sweden, and all the other DNAs from there date back to the 75,000 year mark. They cannot find any DNA that is type O and type O negative and the Rh negative factor that is older on this earth anywhere on the planet past the 10,000 year mark. Okay. And Cassie would ask that for a reason for me to talk about that, because of the reveal that I'm about to tell you that some of you might get crazy over and go, all right, he's nuts. But you can look this up and figure this all out. This isn't fringe science. This is actual fact by science. So the reason that she brings that up is because they say, science, mainstream says it is possible that the people now, hold on, let me preface this with the majority of the population of this earth that are type O negative, like myself, came from a region of the west coast of Spain currently. There is a city in the west coast of Spain currently where 85% of all people in that city are type O negative. Type O negative DNA, and people who have type O negative blood, is the universal donor. I can give blood to anyone on this earth and you guys can accept it. I can only accept type O negative or type O positive, or not a positive, but just type O. Otherwise, I will die. It's the rarest bloodline on the earth. Now, that doesn't mean I'm special in any way other than a representation, and this is what she wanted me to explain to you. Okay, so when people come here from another place, the Orion Crusaders, let's get back on point with Ra. Ra is telling you that the Orion Crusaders, a group of people calling themselves the Crusaders, came from Orion when they were chased out of Orion by the people that lived in Orion, specifically Orion's belt. I call my show Orion Rising. You can see it on the screen right there above my finger. Okay. And you can see that that's the cover of my book, Orion Rising. I call it that because we are waking up as a species and remembering who we are. And there's a very large number of us who have an affinity for the constellation of Orion. We are drawn to it because we came from there, and I'll explain that. So when the Orion Crusaders ran from us on their conquest of the physical plane, the third dimension, they ran and eventually came to this planet. Okay, if you know who Alex Coulier is, and if you don't know who Alex Coulier is, you should look him up. He's been telling you he has been in contact with the Andromedans, an alien race from Andromeda, and been telling you since the early 90s, the late 80s, early 90s, about his communications. And he will tell you about that, and I'll explain that as I go. Okay, and what that ties into this. Ra says they came to this earth, and they came down here, and their modus operandi is come down and do what's being done here. The knowledge that what you know as the Anunnaki, who are the Orion Crusaders, when they got here and what that changed. That is what this book is about without them saying it. And it is about what my book is about, only I say it. It is about the mindset of a definitive timeline when the bad guys got here and changed that. I tell you this because I'm going to move into the spiritual and move into the temporal war and explain to you how things work here. And this is in my book that's going to be coming out later this year. So you're getting a little bit of look at my book that will be coming out in a couple of months. Just tune into the show or my page, because I will be letting you guys know when it comes to pass that it's going to be published and when and where you can get a copy of my book. And I'll be talking about it. Okay, so they got here on Earth and changed the past on Earth. How did they do that? Let me explain to you how this reality works. This is the reality about reality. It's the name of my book. And the temporal war. Okay. They came to Earth in the physical third dimension and in the non-physical fourth dimension. It is a physical place which is existing right now, coexisting on this Earth, currently out of phase with us because we're in the third dimension. There is an entire societal structure living on this planet called Terra, called Earth, currently, who are out of phase with us, who are in the fourth dimension, that are currently have a global world, just like we do, ecosystem, where they're literally living right here next to us. There could be somebody sitting right where I'm sitting in another house that is sitting and occupying the space that I'm in, that has no idea that I'm here. And I don't have any idea because I'm not there. Okay. When they got here in those two guises, the way it works, here's the laws, and the law of one tells you about this, Ra tells you about this. So if you think I'm making this up, so did Dawn back in 1981. Okay, and I didn't read that book and came to the same conclusion on my own. And someone said, that's the law of one, you should read it. The way it works in the physical is, if you come down here to this earth legally, okay, legally means like when Jesus said, I'm here legally. Legally means that you literally are born in a physical body on this planet. You belong here. Okay. I am here legally. I am not from here. I am not veiled, so I know I'm not from here. 86% of the population of this earth is not from here. Wait, that can't be right, Leo. Listen, in 1981, when Ra came through through Carla, and Dawn was talking and they created the law of one, the total population of this earth at the time was 2.4 billion humans. Come forward to 2024, the total population of this earth is currently 7.9 billion humans. Figure out the difference of how many people are on this earth today that were not on this earth in 1981. If you're older than 1980, you have lived through a time when the population has exploded exponentially by more than triple. Okay? What does that mean? That means there's an influx of souls that did not start as a tree or a shrub or a plant or a dog or a cat or a bird or a fish. It came from some other planet and was born into a human body in third dimensional reality. Illusion. The reason I tell you that is when people come here from another place and they get boots on the ground here, when they come in a mass of people, not onesie twosies, there has to be a physical representation, as above, so below, as within, so without, as below, so above. There has to be a physical representation of the spiritual. Jesus, if you know Christianity, came down in physical form to be the spiritual representation in physical. God-man, the world made flesh, came down to be the physical to teach you the spiritual. So, right? So he was the physical representation of the spiritual, came down to earth to do that. That analogy is what happens to all of us. So the reason that the DNA, that is the Rh negative factor, and some people who are maybe type O negative or A negative or B negative may not actually, the soul that's occupying that body may have nothing to do with that DNA whatsoever, and the representation of the souls that created that DNA signature on this earth, because that is not the important thing. I happen to embody that because I was setting up this life to be so perfect that I could be born unveiled. So every part of me, my name, the place, the time, the date that I was born, including the time, the date, and the month, and the year, and everything, creating me as an ascended master with a 33 life number, was done on purpose. And my name being Leonard, Leo, Leonard Lionheart, Leo, Lion, being born on the 13 moon calendar, even though in the 12 moon calendar, I'm a Virgo, on the 13 moon calendar, I would be a Leo. So I have my initials, Leonard Edward O'Neill, Leo. My names are a title. My DNA is telling me that I'm a half Celt, half Viking. My RH negative factor says that I am part of this race of people that is only 10,000 years old on this earth. All of that was done on purpose because, and this is where she wanted me to get to on this, because there is a group of people, Alex Coolier talks about this, there's a group of people who came here, the Raw group, okay? Raw is now part of the Galactic Council, and Raw makes up the Orion Council of Light, or the Orion Council of Love. On the earth, boots on the ground, there are physical beings who are spiritual, who came down, lowered their vibration to be in third dimension and to be mind wiped and to come down here legally on this earth to help fix what the Orion Crusaders damaged that they did. Those people are, according to the Andromedans, when they told Alex Coolier, are called the Patal. The Patal are a group of people who came here who are basically like a military, a spiritual warrior, who will die on any hill, sacrifice their immortal soul if they need be, to come down and attack somewhere that has been taken over by evil people, to defend a place, to kick those people off that rock and fix the damage done, to give back freedom to the people that are on this earth. And when those people got here, their DNA has to be represented on this earth. So there is a DNA that represents a spiritual beings that came here on this earth to do what they did. Not everybody who has that DNA is of those people. There are people that are not even of that DNA. Some of you out there listening to my voice around the world who may not be of an RH negative factor, but your soul in your body is a soul that came here to do and to help exactly the way I'm telling you now. And you may or may not have come from Orion, okay? There are many coalitions that are on this earth currently. And I can tell you this now, we couldn't tell you this 10 years ago. There are many coalitions that are physically down here on this earth as wanderers when you consider the population of the earth is currently more than, 7,000 to 2,000, more than 5 billion, more than 5 billion more than it was before. 86% of the population of this planet are not from here. Not from here. Those people came here to help. You might be one of them. If you're listening to my voice right now, there's a good possibility, if you've stayed this long, there's a good possibility that you are one of them. You are either awake, you're waking up, you're about to wake up, and you're being activated, and you don't know where in the universe. But I ask you this, where did you come from? What is it that you are drawn to in the universe? What star constellation? That will tell you who you are and where you came from. If you're drawn to any one of the three in Orion's belt, you came here with us. If you're from anywhere in the Orion constellation, look up what's there. Then you probably came here as a fringe group or with us to come down here to help. Okay. So when we got here, there has to be a representation because of the way this planet works. Past, present, and future are separated. On this earth, the only place that time exists the way it does for us here is in the first dimension, the second dimension, and the third dimension. The fourth dimension, it starts to change from time having a past, a present, and a future, and the timelines start to blend more into one. By the time you're halfway through the sixth dimension, there is no more time. You're outside of it. When you go to the fourth, you start moving outside of time. That concept is crazy to anyone who's down here because you have never lived without it. You don't know what it, don't remember unless you're awake. Okay. So then you don't remember what it means to live outside of time. So that might sound foreign to you and you might run when I talk about this. Raw's telling you about this. So what happened, okay, not ever reading the Law of One, Alex Coolier talking to the Andromedans. He calls them the A's because he's afraid to say Andromedan because he might get kicked off the internet. So he always refers to them as the A's. The A's. They came here to this earth because they say 8,000 years in the future, 8 to 10 to 12,000 years in the future, this evil in the universe showed up in their sector of the universe, and they started trying to trace it to what's the origin of that. And when they did, they found that it went backwards in time to here on Earth. So they came here and what's going on here? What happened here 12,000 years ago? That started that. Okay, wait, Leo, you just said 10,000 years ago was the typo negative. Yes. because 12,000 years ago, something else happened. The Orion Crusaders got here. Okay, were they here for 2,000 years before we got here to defend this place? No, they got here and we got here right after them. But if they were down on Earth for 2 days before we got here, that's going to be a couple hundred years or more, because you have to have a representation and you're actually opened up to, when you get here, you have to have a past, a present, and a future. So the Patal got here and that DNA looks like it's 10,000 years old. That doesn't mean that we have been here for 10,000 years, but from the perspective of the people here, we've been here for more than that. Okay. But it doesn't mean that. So literally, like the 1938 was more than likely a banner year for who got here when. Okay. So the truth is, between 1938 and 1945 is when this place was invaded by aliens. And then shortly thereafter, they were kicked off this rock. The damage that they did went backwards in time. When you get here, you have to have a past, a present, and a future. And if you're aware of that, and you show up not only in the fifth, but in the fourth, then you can project yourself backwards in time and make changes in the timeline. And that's what they did. And that's what we did when we got here. The same thing, rewriting history by currently in this time period, going backwards, astral projecting in time and fixing things in the past, manifesting in the past as myself in a different body and making changes to fix what they were doing to damage the place. That is what the Anunnaki are doing with that controlling of your pineal gland, the pine cone in their hand, and the little handbag and the little scrolls in their waist. That's the plans of how to fix this to what it is now. So if you look at this earth, there was a definitive line that goes 12,000 years ago that everything changed. That was when the Orion Crusaders got boots on the ground. Well, actually, physically, they got boots on the ground probably in 1938. But that gave them access to the future and to the past, going 10 to 12,000 years. So 8 to 12,000 years in the future, the Andromedans got notice and came and had to go backwards in time to find out the 0 point of origin, which was here on Earth, somewhere between 1938 and 1980. Okay? And they came and made contact and were like, what's going on? Alex Coulier is who they made contact with. I don't know him personally. I've never had a conversation with him. So I'm not a benefit to him. I'm not getting paid by him. None of that. He doesn't know what I'm saying to you that I know past what he has said. He knows that the Patal and he knows about the Andromedans, but he doesn't know anything of what I'm saying unless he watches my show. As far as I know, he doesn't watch my show. I don't know. He might. There's a lot of people who pay attention to my podcast that I'm unaware of, that I find out through people. Did you know that that person listens to you? Did not know that. That's cool, man. Right? So I'm okay with that. So I would love to have a conversation with him about what he knows so we can compare notes. I know people, we have friends that are in common, but I haven't talked to them. So anyways, so spiritually, the typo negative is a physical representation on this earth of the Orion coalition from the Orion council of the people from Orion. There are a lot of you out there that don't know. You're like fans of, I listen to the Law of One. I read the Law of One. You don't know why you're drawn to it, but you know you're drawn to it, and you're also drawn to Orion. You don't know why. Some of you are awake enough to realize it, but most of you out there don't know. Most of the people that I talk to that are drawn to Orion and drawn to the laws of one, they don't know why they're drawn to it, but there's a good possibility you're from there and you came here to do what you're doing. And you don't have the wherewithal yet because you haven't woken up enough to remember who you are. Okay. Stephanie said, I'm B, but that does that make a difference? No. Are you B negative? Are you B positive? That doesn't make your physical makeup of your physical structure doesn't actually make any difference. This is my point to what your soul is. I chose to be typo negative because I needed all of everything to be perfect so that I could be born unveiled to do what I'm doing in this lifetime. Okay. So I chose that so that everything about me would remind me of Orion, would remind me in Orion, I am from the middle star in the Orion's belt. And the people that are there, Peter, I think, is also from there. He might be a Celt. Well, those three are, one is a Viking race, one is a Celtic race, and one is a half-breed Viking Celt. And it literally goes that way. The one on the left, which on your screen is probably right, I'm using my left hand, but it's probably on the screen backwards. But the one on the left is a Viking race. That's where you get the Nordics, the aliens that are here, and some of the Nordics are evil. Every place in third dimension works the way we do. Some of the people are evil and some of them are not. Okay, so some people are like, all the Nordics are evil. No, there's an entire species living inside the earth currently that are Nordic who are not evil. Okay, they came from that planet. They're part of the coalition, but they're inside and they've been here for longer than that. And it was a good thing they were here because it allowed us a place to come down to. I'm not going to get involved in that right now. Okay, so your physical makeup of your body is done for you, that you designed in this lifetime, specifically for this lifetime. It doesn't mean anything to do with your spirituality except for what you're trying to learn here. I designed my physical body to wake me up to my spirituality, to do what I'm doing here. That doesn't mean you did that to yourself. Okay. So, but you've designed your physical body. You've designed who were going to be your parents, whatever happened to you, good or bad in your life. You chose that to happen to you before you got here. You wrote that up. You wanted these things to happen to you in your life. So this is why myself and so many other people are saying now, this isn't happening to you. This is happening for you. You need to realize that. In fact, what's his name, who I just talked about earlier, said that in a commencement speech. I was unaware of that until I was looking at him because of the things that he had said. Literally looked at one of his commencement speeches, and he actually said, this isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. And I was like, that's cool, like mine. So you have to realize that you designed this for yourself. That's part of the expansion of your consciousness. So it doesn't matter what your DNA is, doesn't matter what your bloodline is, that is done for you for some other reason that has to do with your spirituality. But it doesn't mean that you're not. You could be a type B and you could be actually part of the Patal, but in this lifetime you chose to be in that body because there's something that you wanted to learn that had to do with that DNA, those parents, those grandparents, and what that is bringing with you in this lifetime. I chose this specifically for that. Okay, I chose this because there in Orion, I'm a half-breed Celt Viking. So, and Peter, that's why I said that about Peter, because Peter is as well. On this life, Peter lives in Ireland. He's a Celt Viking. I am a Celt Viking, but I'm in America. Okay, but most of my DNA is from Ireland and Wales. And then I have some Scandinavian. There's the Viking part. Okay, but that's only about, I think it's 20%. So everything else except for 5% Native American and 3 to 5% what they call Greco-Roman, everything else is either Irish, Scottish, Welsh, or Scandinavian in my DNA. No African. And I'm typo negative. My whole family's typo negative. My mother, my sister, my brother, my niece, my nephew, like everybody in my family's typo negative. I don't know what my father's blood type was, but I'll bet it was typo negative. My whole clan is typo negative. That was designed on purpose so that I could do what I'm doing today. So the physical representation doesn't have anything to do with the spiritual, except when the spiritual gets here, there has to be a physical representation. That's why you have these definitive races that you have, like, say, the Asian race, which comes from the mantis race. Of people, when they physically got here, they had to have a representation. So the people who came here, the souls who came here who were mantis souls, had to have a physical representation. So the Asian people are there. The Japanese people and Chinese people look a lot like praying mantis, except for their eyes are bulbous. Then you have the Africans, which is another race. And then you have the Europeans, which is another race. You have all these other races that are the Mongolians and the Chinese, and then you have the Australians, and then you have the Polynesians. All of those races are all of the Latin, Latino, Roman-esque, Aryan, and all those races represent. There's 7 DNA strands that represent 7 different races who are the makeup of the people that are here. A couple of them are from like Moldek, which is now the Kuiper Belt, Mars, and Venus, and a couple of other places in the solar system, and some from outside that. It has to be a physical representation when those people get here, because it's now part of the equation of this logos. It becomes part of the logos. Okay. So that's why we have the different races. When you leave this planet, there are other humanoids on other planets that are blue. You talk about that over in India, where they talk about Shiva being blue. Those orange. You have Native Americans who they called the red man because they were pretty much red skinned until the Spanish showed up, and then a lot of that red skin blended and became brown. But before that, if you look back, you see red. That's why they called them the red man. They had red skin. That's kind of been bred out of most of Native Americans now. They're no longer Redskins like the Redskins that used to be the Washington Redskins. If you're an American, you know American football. That most of that DNA is gone now and has been replaced by European DNA, and so they're more brown. They're more Latino now. But that's the way it works. So the temporal war is the knowledge that some people have of being able to go backwards and forwards in time and make changes. The changes of going forward in time and making changes happen in the now more than they do projecting yourself forward, because you can affect things that are happening in the future, but that will only affect things from that point on. So most people will go backwards in time to affect now by changing things in the distant past. That's what part of the modus operandi of those people. And just so that you know, to put it into context, Alex Coolier talks about this. To put it into context, the Orion Crusaders didn't just take over the Earth. When the Orion Crusaders got to this sector of the universe, they took over 22 other solar systems besides this one. Okay? So it was 23 total solar systems in this sector of the universe that they took control of when they got out here, when they were being chased out of Orion and made it to this sector. They came here, they robbed people of all of the minerals that they could, forced the people to build weapons for them, and then they took off and headed towards the center of this Milky Way galaxy on their path of conquest and left little contingents behind to guard this place. We came in right after them, and those people ran for their lives. But the damage that they'd done in the short time that they were here, because they went backwards in time and changed the past, changed things to this societal structure that is currently in place. Hence, the reality of reality returning to the old ways, the reality about reality returning to the old ways, which is why I wrote my book about that. Because the reality about reality is that reality, as you know it, started 12,000 years ago. And if you look back in past, they talk about it without talking about it in the God Man, where they start telling you about what they knew in the past and how spirituality was being practiced on this earth. And there's a certain time when that changed. And then over the course of the past, from 12,000 years ago till now, they were changing it again. Julius Caesar burned all of the scrolls in the Alexandria library in Egypt, burned them all down. Come forward in time to Jesus, go after Jesus when Jesus was preaching about the past and the way things were and teaching that again. After he died, about 800 years later, Constantine was changing it again. Come forward in time to the 1500s, and the people that were in charge of the planet in the 1500s were burning all the books and all the scrolls. We know that the Dead Sea Scrolls were buried some 1,500 years ago, and the Essenes buried all of the knowledge, and then they were hunted down and killed for that knowledge that Constantine was trying to take out of the Bible. And then in 1948, a couple of kids found them by throwing rocks. They were guarding Dad's sheep and they were bored, so they started throwing rocks into a cave, and they heard a pottery break. What was that? And they ran over there and looked, and they found these scrolls. They didn't know what they were. They showed their father. He didn't know what they were, and he burned some of them for firewood until he started looking at them and realized there was writing on it. And then he was like, oh, I need to go and see if I can sell these and make money. Now we have the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay. So we know that throughout time, there is definitive timelines when all of the history of the earth was in jeopardy, and a certain group of people who were evil were trying to eradicate all of history. You can read the book, How the Irish Saved Humanity. There's a book out there called that. You should look that up. It'll tell you how the Scottish and Irish monks were stealing away all scrolls and books that they could find from around the world and hiding them in their churches over in Ireland and Scotland, and paying scribes to copy them over and over and over and over. Every piece of history we currently have on this earth that hasn't been uncovered since then, because we found the Dead Sea Scrolls and the stuff over there from in Turkey and around the world where we have found things in the last few hundred years, everything that dates from the Renaissance in the 1500s backwards, all of that history is only on this earth because they saved it from the Renaissance when they were trying to burn all the books. They were trying to eradicate the memory of the past and the knowledge that's in this book, the knowledge that's in this head of mine that I put in my book, and other people have unlocked around the world, and they're telling you about it all over the world. That knowledge you can unlock as well. That is not a knowledge that we have made up. It is not a knowledge that we own. It is a universal knowledge that everyone in service to others can access, that is up there in the Akashic records or the halls of Amente, whichever term you know and are more familiar with. That information is up there for you to access. Okay? That information is there for the world to see and the world to know, but you have to be in service to others to be able to access that knowledge. And you have to be ascending. You cannot be living in the flesh. And that knowledge becomes apparent to you. There's a reason that that's called apparent to you. And that knowledge is accessible. So I may sound crazy to you right now, because if I'm pushing you outside of you or pulling you outside of your comfort zone, which is what I'm attempting to do, I'm doing that on purpose because I'm trying to expand your consciousness. And I know I'm talking without looking down, so I hope that I'm not missing what you guys are saying or asking questions. If you're asking questions and I'm missing it, please let me know that I missed a question. Okay. So, be negative. Stephanie said, my uncle and aunt are, no, me and my uncle are negative B. So if you have the RH negative factor, that's the no Africans. You don't have any African DNA. Didn't we have this conversation? I'm having I'm having a deja vu. I thought you and I had this conversation already on air. So I guess maybe we didn't. So that's weird right there that you said that. I somehow knew that you were going to say that. So I'm getting a deja vu. That's actually a good sign. To me, when I get deja vus, I know that I'm on the right path because I'm actually tapping into everything happening now. And so I know that that's funny. So yeah, I didn't know that. So the rest is positive, different types of, the people in the family, right? I have some of the people in my family aren't, but most of the people in my family are type O negative, which is crazy. We're also mostly left-handed, right? Which is really bizarre that we're a left-handed clan, that everybody in my mom's side and my father's side were left-handed. My brother's left-handed. Some of my siblings, my sisters are right-handed, but they're more ambidextrous. Because if you're left-handed, you have to be ambidextrous because this planet is 90% right-handed and made up for right-handed people, not left-handed, right? So that's crazy, right? So I did miss a few questions. I apologize for that. Let me go up. So this is why I need to start doing this show and having somebody be the producer in control that can, please ask the questions again, because I don't know where they are, and I'll scroll. So as we go forward, you're going to see me transition to have somebody on here with me being in control so that they can say, so-and-so asked this question, because I missed them. If I don't have my glasses on, I don't see the questions. So I apologize if I missed them. I'm going to try and go back up, ask them again, but I'm going to try and go back up and see if I can see them. It'll be better if you guys just retype your questions or copy and paste so that way I can answer what you were saying, any question that you've asked. So I apologize for that. If I leave my glasses on, I take my glasses off so that you guys know you can see my eyes, okay? Because I know that there's a glare here if I leave those on, and I want people to be able to see my eyes to when you're watching me speak, to see what's going on. Some of you have the sight, and I want you to be able to access that when I talk, but if I put these on, I know that you can't. Do you see? So that's why I take them off, but without them on, I can't read the chat. So if you did ask a question and I have not answered it, please retype it and I will try to get to it. Okay. Because otherwise, maybe I can do this. I said, I'm going to start doing that to wear my Santa Claus glasses like this. So you guys see me over that, looking at you, and then I can look at my glasses to see. Maybe I'll start doing that. Right. Stephanie said, I'm new here. This is the first time that we have chatted. Oh, okay. So you're supposed to be here then, Stephanie, because when I looked and read what you said and then looked at your name and your picture, I was like, didn't we already have this conversation? So I got a deja vu. So somewhere in the ether, I knew you were going to be here. So you were drawn to me. And the fact that I have memory of us having a conversation that we didn't have tells me that you were actually supposed to be here today. whether you're aware of it or not. You're supposed to be here today. Now my mother's coming over here, so I'm going to have to, I'm my mother's caregiver. I'm going to have to go and help her sit back down because she's coming over here wondering what I'm saying. So I apologize. I'm going to leave you guys. I'm going to turn Raw on for a second. I'll come back, type your questions if you have them, and I'll be back in a second.
Raw.
And I'm going to go get my mother to sit back down in her chair, and then I'll be back here. She has Alzheimer's, and I'm taking care of her. So let me go and set her down. I'll be right back. So you guys listen to Raw and type your questions, and I'll check when I get back.
I am Raw. Let us clarify further. As we have previously stated, all beings have the potential for all possible vibratory rates. Thus, the potential of the green and blue energy center activation is, of course, precisely where it must be in a creation of love. However, the negatively polarized entity will have achieved harvest due to extremely efficient use of red and yellow/orange, moving directly to the gateway indigo, bringing through this intelligent energy channel the INST reamings of intelligent infinity. 47.5 Questioner. Then at 4th density graduation into 5th, is there anything like the percentages you gave for 3rd density graduation into 4th for polarization? Raw. I am Raw. There are, in your modes of thinking, responses we can make, which we shall make.
Okay, so I apologize. I had my mom, like I said, I'm her caregiver. She's got dementia, and so she saw me talking. She got up, went to the bathroom, and was coming back to sit down in the living room and saw me over here talking, and she was putting on her jacket because I have the temperature at 76, and that's a little cold for her 79-year-old body. She's going to be 80 in 2 months. Next month. This is May now. She's going to be 80 in May. And so she saw me and she came over here, and so I was having her sit back down, right? So you're a caregiver as well? Oh, okay. See? So you know what I'm talking about. You know what it's like, right? Stephanie, I didn't know that you were a caregiver. So yeah, so if you guys have questions, please ask them. Otherwise, I'll start talking about the law of one again, and we'll move into that. So what is Peter saying here? Peter says, it makes me think the oldest cult in the world is the Vatican Church, right? You know that, bro. You and I have had that conversation. I'm a Roman Catholic. I was baptized Roman Catholic, but yeah. And then he says, and let's see, the Roman Catholic Church. And so I just said Mexican, right? Yeah, no, you were trying to say Roman Catholic Church, and you said makes me think, and you said Mexican. That's funny, bro. So yeah, so you have to realize that the dynamic way here, show of hands, I'm going to throw this out there again. I always ask this to people, and I know that there's a lag, so some of you won't be able to answer Danny, welcome, before I give the answer. But I always ask this question because of the state of the world today. I ask people, what do you think the percentage is of good to evil people on the earth currently? And I ask people that all the time when I talk to them because 1% of the population owns 99% of all wealth. 1% of the population controls 99% of all landmass. 1% of the population owns 99% of all television, radio, all media outlets. Okay. So whenever I ask that question to people, what do you think the dynamic is, the percentage of good to evil? Most people say, 50-50, or maybe there's more evil than there are good. That's completely wrong. That's 100% completely wrong. The actual dynamic currently on this earth is changing, but the dynamic has been standardly average on this earth is 14% of the population of this earth are evil, are in service to self. 86% are in service to others, are good. That is the dynamic. So literally, and of the 14%, there's only 1% of that 14% that control everything. But they're projecting onto you and me and everybody else that they are just as strong. And they tell you that with the whole good to evil ratio. They tell you that there's these two entities that are equal. God and the devil are equal, and they're sitting vying for control of the human race on two opposing mountains. That's a lie in and of itself. The only part of that that's true is that the struggle that is within you is equal. The devil on the left shoulder and the angel on the right shoulder. That is the ego on the left shoulder and the conscience, not consciousness, conscience on your right shoulder. That is set up in you to be, as the Native Americans would say, the two wolves. Which wolf do you feed? You become the wolf you feed the most. So if you feed your ego and you're living in the flesh and you eat of the tree of life, then you are in service to self and evil. If you're not and you're in service to others, you feed that wolf, which is you listen to the angel on your right shoulder, your conscience, that says, don't do that. You wouldn't want that to be done to you. That's just wrong. Don't rape that girl. Don't beat that person. Don't steal from that person. The 10 Commandments are that angel on the right shoulder. The 10 Commandments are: do not covet thy neighbor's wife, don't bear false witness, don't steal, don't murder, don't kill. Those are there, the 10 Commandments. The gluttony, it's telling you what not to do to be a good person. That is the same thing. That's a physical representation of the basic laws that govern, that should be governing if you're in service to others. Don't do these bad things. Okay, do you see? So nobody's typing any questions. So I assumed that whoever was asking questions either left or I answered them along the way, because you guys didn't retype them while I was gone. So I'm assuming that you don't have any questions when it comes to that. Otherwise, please type them in the chat and I'll check and we'll go from there. Otherwise, I'm going to start playing Raw of thing again, right? God killed more people than Lucifer, right? Yeah, well, God didn't do that, but Luther killed nobody, and that's been proved. Yeah, no, right? There was a question, Stephanie. I didn't see it. I apologize. Did you retype it again and I missed it again? Holy crap. Been floating in and out, right? So please type it again then. If there's a question here, I didn't see it, and I'm going to stay here now. So type it again. Polly Sullivan. This is right. So Polly Sullivan. So Polly had a question. Is that what it was? So did I miss that? Well, type that. Then I'm going to look back up and see if I can find Polly had a question. All right. Hold on. I'm going to find you, Polly. I'm going to find your question, however high up it is here. Let's see. May you talk about A positive, also the difference in positive and negative types. That was the question. So the positive DNA means that, yeah, you did. I apologize. I just found it. I apologize. So when I sat back down, I didn't scroll up. I apologize for that. That was my fault. So the positive, anything, A positive, B positive, AB positive. Positive just means that you have African DNA. Negative just means you don't have African DNA. So that's all that means. So Rh negative factor in any blood type means that you currently, whatever you are, if you're A negative, B negative, AB negative, O negative, that means you don't have any African DNA. If you're A positive, B positive, OB positive, AB positive, or O positive, that means you have African DNA. That's all the Rh negative factor means. That's all those things. The plus and minus only means whether or not your DNA has African DNA, and there's a reason for that that's important. Let me explain why. Okay. There is actual physiological reason that those two, whether you have a negative Rh negative factor or an Rh positive factor, is important. Let me explain. If you have African DNA, then that means that you have a possibility, because you have African American DNA, a possibility of having a problem with sickle cell anemia, because sickle cell anemia only is a disease that people that have African DNA can get, which can be fatal. More importantly, if you have the Rh negative factor, and this is scary to some people when you find out, the reason they have you take a blood test when you get married is to find out if you have a negative factor, Rh negative factor in your bloodline. Because if your DNA is A negative, B negative, AB negative, O negative, then your spouse, if I'm the male and I have, which I do, and I have type O negative DNA, if I breed with a woman who doesn't have type O negative DNA, has a positive DNA, whatever the bloodline is, has a positive number, then if my fetus that she's impregnated with ends up with my genetic code as a negative, the fetus's DNA will reject the mother and try to kill her. Okay, this is the truth. And she'll have to take medication to stop her own fetus's DNA from being so aggressive to kill her while she's pregnant. If a woman is got the negative factor and she marries a man who doesn't, who has a positive factor, and she gets pregnant with a child, and say she's type O negative or A negative or B negative, and you get your child is O positive, or say because you're B negative, right? Like Stephanie was it that was B negative. If you're B negative and you get married to somebody who's A positive, but not B positive because you're B, it might not be as bad, but it's still going to be a problem. Because you're negative, you will have miscarriages if you're pregnant with somebody who is not accepted. Your body kills the fetus if the fetus is not conducive to your DNA. That is why I cannot accept any blood from anyone but type O or type O negative, because I'm type O. People who are type O can only accept type O or type O negative DNA. And people who are type O negative can only accept type O negative or type O. I can't take a B negative because of the B. It will kill me. My body will reject it. My body will kill your DNA, and I can't accept your blood, and it'll make me sick, and my body will attack your blood. The same thing happens when a woman is pregnant. You either are attacked by your fetus because it has a negative, the type O negative, or you, if you're type O negative, will attack the fetus and you'll have miscarriages. I was working with a woman probably about 8 years ago now, and I knew her, was working with her for a while, and she and her husband were having problems. Remember, I'm a minister, and I was counseling them, and they were having issues, and they were young, in their early 20s, and they were about to break up because she had about 4 or 5 miscarriages, and they kept trying to get pregnant. And they were just upset, just spiritually out of their minds because they keep losing these children. And I said, let me ask you a question. I don't think anyone's asked you this. They lived in Canada. I said, let me ask you a question. Have you been tested, your DNA? And she goes, what are you talking about? I said, have you tested your blood? She goes, yes. I said, what is your blood type? Is your blood type O negative? She said, yes, it is. Why do you ask that? And I said, you need to tell your doctor that you need to be taking medication. She said, why? I said, your DNA is killing your blood. What is your husband, his blood type is a positive blood type or not O? And she's like, yeah, he's A positive. And I'm like, you need to tell your doctor that. And if your doctor up in Canada doesn't understand it, come to America. She's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, in America, we get tested on purpose to find out that. And the reason we get tested to find that out is if we're breeding with someone, the spouse has to have medicine. Otherwise, her body, if you're type O negative, your body, you're going to kill your child every time unless that child gets your bloodline, your O negative. If your egg and his sperm doesn't give her your traits, your body is too aggressive and it will kill you. Your DNA will kill hers or his. And that's what's been happening to you. And she's like, it can't be that simple. I'm like, it is. Talk to your doctor. Tell your doctor you heard this. Is this true? And your doctor will prescribe you medicine and you will have children. They now have 4 kids. They now have 4 kids because of that. I told them, fix this. They went to the doctor. She came back to me and said, oh my God, the doctor gave me medicine and said, I don't know why we didn't think about this before. I'm surprised you didn't do a DNA test. Well, we're not married. We're not legally married, so we never went through that. The doctor didn't ask that question. So now she takes this medicine, and every time she gets pregnant, she's on this medicine. It keeps her body from killing her fetus, and now they have 4 kids. Happily married, still together to this day. Okay, so on a physical level, that is a representation of the people who came from Orion to fight against the Orion Crusaders. That doesn't mean that everybody who has that DNA or only those people are that personage in the soul. Doesn't mean any of that anymore. But like myself, I put myself into this position on purpose so that everything, the stars would align so that I could be born unveiled in this lifetime. And those of you like Penny and Denise and Cassie and a few others in the crowd who have been online when you've seen other psychics do readings on me, you know why. You know why I chose that. Because of that. And you were there when they talked about it. So I did all that so that the stars would line up so that I could be born unveiled in this life, because this is the phase that we're moving into in the next few years, going into 2032, where this planet is going to go through this Kali Yuga, this Ragnarok, this end times, this time of tribulations and time of troubles. That's now. That's all now. But that doesn't mean that the world's going to come to an end. That's not what that means. It doesn't mean that. Revelation doesn't mean the end of the world. Revelation means revelation. It means illumination. But the control of the religions will have you in the fear that you're going to be the left behind. They're even doing that with the Christian religion. Are you going to be left behind? Are you going to be one of the ones when everybody winks out of existence, when Jesus drives up in a bus and says, all you guys that are my followers, get in. Everyone else, you don't get to come in here. And then the Hebrews would have you to believe that they're the only ones that are going to go to heaven because they're the chosen race and that all of us don't get to go to heaven because we're not Jewish. And then the Mormons will tell you that only they get to go to heaven. And then so every race, every religion tells you they're the only ones. All the Christians say, if you don't have water chucked on your head and somebody says, in nomine Patri Filii Spiritus Sancti, you don't get to go to heaven. It's all a lie. And then the whole idea being propagated that you have only one life and that after this, you go to this place called heaven and you go up and you drive up in the bus with Jesus and then he gets out and abandons you and leaves you and runs behind the gates and locks you out. And you have to go up to the gates and there's a guy there with a book, and he says, well, now I have to judge you. Wait a minute, you mean I came all this way and I might have to get in the bus and go all the way back down to the fire and brimstone? Yep, that's the way it works. Sucks to be you. What's your name again? Let's find out what you did in life. You jerked off when you were 7. Get out. You get no wings. Take off his little freaking thing off the top of his head, put him on the bus, and you go to fire and brimstone for all of eternity because you suck. That's all a lie. That's the same as saying don't go into the light because it's a trap and you're locked into a matrix and it's evil and they're coming to get you. All that's a lie. All of that has been controlled. The religions have been controlled. And they talk about it in this book. I talk about it in my book. I'm glad I didn't read this before I wrote my book because people would accuse me of plagiarizing this, which I did not do. And I read it now and I'm like, wow, good thing I didn't write this. But it makes now what I was going to write for my next book easier because I will reference this book and a few others that I have read. Right underneath the camera, I have the Smith's Bible Dictionary, which they reference in here in the God-Man, where he literally put together a dictionary of explanation of terms and words for the Bible, for the Old Testament and the New Testament. And Smith's version is the one that most theologians have a copy of. And I told my brother about it. He goes, don't tell me you got that book too. I said, yeah, I do. He goes, I'm going to be ordering that book. We're already working out of it. And I said, bro, you got to remember theologian. And he was like, yeah, I'm starting to realize and a little bit more and appreciate my big brother. And I'm like, yeah, you thought I was crazy just saying this crazy stuff. And now that you're in the theological college, you're learning what I already know. And you come to me and we have these long discussions about spirituality. And you're starting to appreciate your brother a little bit more. And he's like, yeah. He's like, I'm going to be an evangelical. I'm like me, I'm an evangelical basically, but I'm not just preaching Christianity. I'm preaching the old world spirituality. I said, little brother, I hope that you unlock within yourself that knowledge and start learning about the old ways that everyone on this earth were teaching the exact same thing until 12,000 years ago. And then it changed. 12,000 years ago was the beginning of the change, and that was solidified about the year 900. And since then, they've had total control, but they've been losing control that entire time. Okay? And people don't realize that because they're like, the world is worse now than it's ever been. No, it's exactly. If you look at the time when Jesus was alive or 5,000 years ago when Socrates was alive, he said the earth is not flat, it's round. And he was put to death for it. Jesus said that God exists and that you're supposed to have a personal relationship with God and you're supposed to be kind to one another and you're supposed to ascend to heaven. They crucified him and tortured him and killed him for that. Mohammed came out and said, remember what Moses said and what he was teaching and what Jesus was teaching, and you're supposed to be nice to people. And they went after him and he ascended before they could get him. That was, Muhammad was in the year 1200 or so, 1400. Okay, so Mahatma Gandhi in the 1800s was teaching spirituality and they shot him through the heart and killed him. I'm saying the same things those people said thousands of years ago, and I'm still alive. I'm not on trial. Things have changed. It's getting better. We have mass media. We have smartphones, and so that anything that farts across the earth right now is being put on my phone. So they're propagating fear by giving you instant fear of everything and showing you and putting too much information into your brain, overloading you, constantly bombarding you 24 hours a day to keep you living in fear even more and more and more and more. because their way of life is ending. This entire societal structure after 2032 will cease to exist. This way of life is going to end, and a new way of life is going to begin on this planet. And there are some of us here who have been working for thousands of years on this earth to make that get back to where it's supposed to be, to let you have the free will that you don't know you lost, to bring you this knowledge so that things can go back to where they are. But like you've heard in the fabled Bibles, it's always darkness just before the dawn. This is the dawning of a new day, age of Aquarius. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. They knew what they were singing about when they were singing about it. This is the dawning of a new age. We are moving into a new era. The entire Earth and Sun, the solar system, is moving into a region of space that is vibrating in the Venus energy, the love energy. So no matter what they do here on Earth, the evil people, no matter what they do here, this entire planet left to its own devices will change the dynamic of the Earth because of the vibratory pattern of this planet and where we are getting from the universe itself. Praise be to Jesus. Hail this man. That's going to happen whether they like it or not. They can't admit that and won't admit that and don't want you to know that, because they know what's going on with the temporal war, and they know that you can choose to be in that world where AI takes control and there's only about 660,000 humans left here and everybody else is dead. They know that you can choose that. That's the Hopi Rock legend. Look the Hopi Rock legend up here in the Four Corners. I used to live about 400 miles away from the Four Corners in Arizona. I used to live there in Phoenix, Arizona, in Queen Creek, 45 minutes southeast of Phoenix. And, that's only a couple hundred miles to the Four Corners where the Hopi Rock legend was. Thousands of years ago, they were talking about that. Okay, so is anybody else that has questions? People are making comments. Stephanie said, when I was young adult, probably 18 or 19, I had a dream that my family started to disappear. And then a loud voice said, I didn't go because I am a whore. Is that what they said? Is that what you're saying? I'm not sure what that reference is, right? So that's funny. So I don't know if that is what you were intending to say, but that's not why, right? But you have to remember this. All right, that's actually kind of cool that you said that. Now I realize why I was bringing that to the attention. I realized you have to realize this. Okay, Ra talks about this in the Law of One, that just in the last session that we were in before we're in this session, in session 46, that you are susceptible, especially when you don't know what's going on. You're susceptible to, and the modus operandi of the Orion Crusaders is to psychically transmit to you, to me, to everyone else. Your ego does this. And the biggest, the most vulnerable time and I've noticed for me, and most people are the same, that your ego has the most voice is when you first wake up. Because when you are asleep, the ego cannot reach you, neither can the thinking mind. The only thing that can get to you is your dreams, and your dreams are not coming from your ego. Your dreams are coming from you, your higher self. It's not the thinking mind, and it's not the ego. All dreams are messages from either your guides or your higher self, or coming in from negative entities, putting negative thoughts into your mind. So psychically, you're bombarded as well as physically being bombarded by all the stuff that's going on in this place. This place isn't real, but it thinks it is. This place is not conscious, but it's made up of all the consciousness. This logos is made up of all the consciousness of all of us individuals who are here creating it. And all of the trees and plants and flowers, they're entities that are alive. They have a job to do. They're not self-aware yet. They become self-aware. We assist in that with animals. They're two-dimensional. We assist by having pets. I have a cat. If you have cats, dogs, chickens, pigs, horses, and you treat them like a person and you talk to them, that gives them self-worth. They learn that they have a name because you teach them the concept of the name. And so when you call the name, they come to you and they start identifying. That is the catalyst for them becoming self-aware. They start identifying with, I am that name. I don't know what they start associating with that. And then they start realizing that they're important to you, and you become important to them. And that starts the catalyst of self-awareness. And once they become self-aware, when that life ends, then when the next life begins for them, they on this planet become a human. So then they get born into life as a baby, as a human for the first time. They're first self-aware. I think, therefore I am. That's the progression of the way things work from zero to third dimension. You are something. You are something that has a instinct, and your instincts are either to look up at the sun and get the light from the sun, opening your flowers, standing upright, whatever, from being a rock or a tree or a leaf or the air or an amoeba or whatever, a fish. Then what happens is you start associating with third dimensional beings, and you start being around them as a wild animal being hunted by them or whatever, a bear. You start seeing humans coming into your existence, and that changes the way that you think. And then you're leery of humans. You learn to be leery of humans. Birds are interacting in our society all the time. They become less afraid of us because they're around us, and they realize that most of us are not trying to hurt them. They learn that. Crows are very smart. They have a little brain, but they have memory. They're very smart. A lot of animals are that way. Mice. So if you look at the animals and how they react, and then how they react to humans, you see people on TikTok and all over the place with their shorts and memes and reels where they have like foxes, and the foxes are their friends. They're acting like a dog, and they're petting them, and because they are what you used to be. They're alive. They have a soul. They're just not self-aware yet. And we assist them to become self-aware. And on the grandiose scale, past that, people like myself who come from the fourth or fifth dimension also come back as wanderers to help people at the third dimension, to assist them on the journey and realization of moving into the next dimension. So it's not just for me for extra credit by coming back as a wanderer. It also assists the people here by me doing that. Just like Jesus came as the sacrifice for everyone and made a big deal about it and became the savior character, which happened 11 times prior to that on the earth, that the Jesus character came here. Okay. So yeah. So Stephanie said, I had a pet crow. It was amazing until it was time for her family to do the murder of crows, right? And hold his funeral, right? Yeah. And that made me sad. Well, they have a cycle of life that they go through, and there's a reason we call it a murder of crows, right? And not a clan of crows, right? So yeah, that happens, and that's just like turkeys. If you've ever seen a flock of turkeys, there will sometimes be one turkey that they kick out of the group, and the turkey ends up dying alone because the whole group, for whatever reason, have tried them and found them guilty of something, and they won't let them into the herd anymore. That happens in all animals kingdoms. You see where a bear is exiled, or a deer is exiled, or an elk is exiled, or a tiger is exiled. They did something that there was a tribunal and they were kicked out. Or they were trying to become the alpha, and the alpha kicked their ass, and now they have to leave because if they don't, the alpha will kill them. That's the pecking order that happens in nature, that is natural, that is just the way things are. And it kind of sucks. Nature to us seems brutal when we see it happen, and we see like, a hawk come down and swoop down and grab up a mouse and kill it and eat it. What if that mouse was your friend? Then you were like, no, you fucker, right? You know what I mean? But that's the natural order of things, is the way things happen. And sometimes people get annoyed because they like Bambi, and you can't kill and eat a deer because I like Bambi. And so you suck because you shoot a deer. Well, that's deer meat is good. I've had it. If it's not gamey, if you get a gamey one, then the gamey sucks. But if you get one that's not gamey, that's delicious. If you know what you're doing, that's delicious. Right. I love buffalo meat, but we can't just be going around doing that, because the people in the 1800s here in North America almost killed all the buffalo off because they liked the fur for jackets and shit, for crying out loud. They almost murdered off and left the meat to rot in the fields because people back east were buying that jackets and shit. It became very popular. The minx was the same way. It almost went extinct on this earth because so many people wanted a mink coat. We had to turn that into a protected species. And buffaloes are slowly repopulating, but there's only about 10,000 buffaloes now in the United States, and another 15,000 maybe in Canada. The bald eagle is the same. Being the freaking bird of America, there was a time when there was only about 5 left in the United States. It was luckily that the Canadians weren't killing them off, because there was a ton up there that have migrated back down to the Americas that aren't getting shot by stupid hillbillies drinking beer, right? So you have to look at things from a different perspective when it comes to that. Look at what the state of Wyoming, as more importantly, the Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone National Park almost dried up and died off in the 1970s because they killed off all of the wolves from that ecosystem, because the wolves were eating the deer and they wanted to have people there to go and be able to see things and sell tickets. So they killed all the deers off, and all of a sudden, because they are not the deer, but they killed all the wolves off, and because of that, the deer population overpopulated, and there was no natural predator. And all of a sudden, all the rivers were overgrown, and it was killing off the rivers, and the ecosystem was dying. And one guy, a scientist in the 70s, was saying, we have to reintroduce the wolves. They didn't believe him. He kept crying about it and yelling about it for about 10 years. And finally, about 1983 or 84, somebody listened to him and said, what do we have to lose? We're going to lose Yellowstone National Park. And there's not going to be any tourism going here because no one's going to want to come here because it's dying. The ecosystem is dying. What if the guy was right? His studies seem like it might be worth something. Why don't we reintroduce the population of wolves on a limited basis? We can always kill them again. Somebody in the state of Wyoming said, this is a good idea. Let's try it. So they took 47 wolves and they let them run free. And guess what? The ecosystem went back to normal, and the wolves killed off some of the deer. And because the wolves and the deer were eating all of the foliage, the rivers started to work again, and people could find water, and the deers were less numbers, but the whole ecosystem became prosperous with having the wolf reintroduced into the ecosystem. So against the whole idea of people in the United States who wanted to kill the wolf off completely and eradicate it because it was killing babies across the United States, they killed that off. Another example I just talked about today was the honeybee, the European honeybee. When the Roman Catholics, Jake, welcome. When the Roman Catholics got here, over from Europe, they brought over the honeybee, the European honeybee, introduced it to the North American continent. It took over the North American continent, and no one's alive today that knew what the North American continent looked like prior to the honeybee being here. And the ecosystem survived, and the honeybee, the European honeybee, was pollinating and is pollinating most of the food that we eat and all of our plants and flowers all over the United States and all the way up into Canada and down into Central America because of that. And then all of a sudden, back in the year 2004, going into 2006, from 2003 to 2006, the honeybees started dying off. Millions of them just started dropping dead everywhere. And everybody was freaking out, wondering what the hell happened. Why is the European honeybee just dying everywhere? Ben & Jerry's donated a fuck ton of money to do research because they realized that without the honeybee, that Ben & Jerry's would go out of business because they wouldn't have any flavors. And everybody in the whole world was like, if the European honeybee dies in the North American continent, then the people are going to have to be worker bees and pollinate. Because if the honeybee doesn't pollinate, we won't have any food. We'll all starve to death and die. Everybody freaked out in science and spent a lot of money to figure it out. Turned out the pesticides we were using in Canada and the United States was poisoning the European honeybee. So just at the brink of extinction, they figured it out because of people like Ben & Jerry from the Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream Corporation spent a lot of money doing research to uncover what happened. They realized there was something in the shit they were spraying on plants to kill off certain bugs to keep them, and it was killing the honeybee because they were picking it up in the pollen and stepping on the plants, and it was taking it back, and they were all dying from poison. So it was like rat poison to them. But what they found out as they were fixing that problem was that the bumblebee population and a few other insects that also harvest the nectar and the pollen and pollinate, they all of a sudden tripled in size because they weren't competing with the European honeybee anymore. So they could have let the European honeybee die, and it would have, the ecosystem in the Americas would have gone back to the way it was prior to the Europeans showing up over here a few hundred years ago. And they didn't realize it until they saw it. But then they were like, well, we're going to change the pesticide anyways, because we don't know what else damage that's going to cause to the ecosystem. And they did. So now the European honeybee is coming back. It's taken 20 years for it to really come back. And now the bumblebee population and a few other insects have because of that, utilized that to stay a little bit larger than they were. So they've hit an equilibrium that's not the same equilibrium that it had been for a couple hundred years. It's a different dynamic now, but it's still, they're doing the same job. That's the ecosystem that is this natural balance. And I tell you that because the ecosystem that is us and this yin and yang, this good and evil ratio that changes. If you go to a different third dimensional planet or solar system, they could have 40% evil and 60% good on that, or the other way, where they could have 2% evil and 98% good. That is determined by the logos of the planet. And on Earth, ours averages between 12 and 14%. Doesn't go any higher than that very often, and it doesn't go too much lower than that, but it's going to change now and dip back down less than from 14 to about 10 in the next 30 years here on this earth, because we're moving into a different place. It's not going to eradicate evil. There is no war between good and evil to where you have to defeat evil. Evil will never be defeated, because this scenario that is this ecosystem is the veiling, and it's the laws of the one. It's part of the law of one. This was created for this scenario so that we could have an organic experience of life and death, good and evil, and all the things that that entails. So all of this is absolutely 100% necessary and has to happen this way. It'll never change other than the pendulum swings from one side to the other, and it stays going back and forth. And right now we've been over on the side, the human race has been the farthest away from the light that it could possibly be. Starting 12,000 years ago was the furthest away from the light and most evil, and it's moved slowly now and it's coming back, although it seems to everyone who's alive today that life is really bad, but it's nothing compared to what it was in the past if you look at the past. Right? So you just have to look at that, right? The ecosystem, Anna says, the ecosystem has taken a decline. If you look at 20 years ago, there was a lot of insects on the windscreens of cars. Look at now. Yeah, the ecosystem has changed, but that's a natural thing. But some of it is because of pesticides and crap, and they're not telling you about that. And other people will tell you, it has to do with climate change. And I'm like, climate change is not what you think it is. I'm alive long enough to know that in the 1970s, they were telling us we were moving into an ice age, that the global temperature was cooling 2 degrees every year, and that an ice age was imminent, and that by the year 2042, we were going to be in an ice age. And then they changed that to by the year 2020, we're going to be in an ice age. And oh my God, we need to make changes in the earth, and we all need to change because we're going to be in an ice age. We're all going to die of cold, and we're all going to have to move down to Antarctica or live in Brazil because it's going to be frozen again. And then overnight, one day that stopped, and they started saying, no, wait, no, not these 10 commandments, because they dropped the plate. All of a sudden it was, no, the globe is changing and it's getting hotter, and the ice caps are going to melt, and we're going to boil. It's not going to happen. If the ice caps melt, it causes an ice age. Okay. So if the ice caps melt, it's going to cool down the ocean because of all the ice. And everyone goes, no, there's not enough ice, and it's going to melt. If that were the case, it would have already melted. Okay. It's not going to do that. If you lived in the North American continent this last winter, you know what I'm talking about, because there was a high pressure system that went a little too far north, and it caused an outbreak bubble that popped out and went all the way down almost to the bottom of the United States of America. And we just were on the coldest winter on record in the last 125 years on the North American continent in a like a month or two time period, because air from the north blew out like a bubble across the United States. That's what's going on in the Arctic all the time. So if the ice caps melt, all of that cold comes down here and will cause an ice age. So they're lying to you. The planet is now warming. 40 years ago, we were going to be in an ice age by now. Now, all of a sudden, we're not in an ice age and we're going to be melting and we're all going to drown because the sea rise is going to rise another 350 feet overnight because the planet is warming. Okay. And here's the scary part. Guess what? That little air frost that blew across the nation last winter did to the global temperature of this earth, which they claim is heating up every year by 3 degrees. And we've heated up 3 degrees in the last 50 years in the United States. That one frost cooled our planet down by a half a degree. One bubble popping out from the north this last winter, you can look this up, cooled the global earth temperature down a half a degree in less than 30 days on this earth from a blast of air coming out of the Arctic down here and covering the entire United States and then going across the planet and covering Europe and shooting across and going one circle around the whole earth. Global temperature was set back 35 years, but they're not going to tell you that, because then you'll go, okay, so then all this climate crap you're telling me isn't exactly true. Shut up now. Never mind that now. Give us money. We got to change everything and get rid of the internal combustion engine and go into electric engines because they're so much better for the environment. And a study just came out that they're actually 300 times worse for the environment with the particulates from that electric engine doing damage to the ozone layer than the gases coming off of your combustion engine. They don't want you to know about that either. Look up the studies. Look it up. You'll see what I'm talking about. Yeah, Texas had snow and ice, Stephanie said. Yes, Texas. Desert, right? So did Arizona and New Mexico. Those are deserts, man. Snow and ice, right? The northern part of Texas and Arizona and New Mexico does have snow and ice in the wintertime. But it was snow and ice in places of Texas. It wasn't supposed to be snow and ice, right? Because literally when they talked about it on the news here, the guy in this local news was telling about it, the meteorologist, and he said, this is what happened. One of the high pressure systems floated too far north. Another high pressure system out here in the Pacific Ocean pressed a high pressure system north, and that went up. And when it went up into the Arctic, it broke the Arctic zone, which is up there, and the Arctic zone popped out like a bubble, and all of that cold air came down and went right straight across the whole United States and Canada and went across the Atlantic Ocean and went across Europe and China and then dissipated and went back to normal by the time it got back around. So we didn't have we don't think we're going to have another thing happen but we are going to have right now coming up another trough that's cooling us down starting today. That's coming down from up there, but it's not a big one that's going to make ice and snow for everybody. It's just going to cool everything off and give us some rain shooting across the north of, and snow shooting across the north of the United States starting today. I'm watching it on the news right now. I can look into the living room and see they're talking about it right now. So we're going to have some more snow that's going to shoot across the United States, but it's not going to dip down to you guys in Texas. Right? We got to have some cold air, but it's not going to be like that one that hit us. 5%, half of a freaking degree in just that one storm that went across the world lowered the planet. So it literally changed the global temperature and set us back almost 40 years of what it rose. 20 years, 25 years. It took 25 years for the global temperature to go up 5 degrees. We just lowered it with one blowout. So what they're telling you is not true. If all of the ice caps melt, then all of that cold air is going to be released because all the ice that's up there that's cooling everything is going to go into the water and the sea level is going to rise, and that's going to cool the earth down. That's going to cause the earth to cool naturally. It happens that way. It ebb and flows. That's why we have ice ages that happen and they last for like 10,000 years. We had one that lasted 10,000 years and it ended 10,000 years ago. We're actually due for another ice age to start. So they were predicting that back in the 70s that we were moving into that ice age. Okay, there's a good possibility if the global temperature keeps rising that an ice age will be caused. So we're not going to die because the planet's going to boil the oceans. It's just going to cool down on its own. It's just what happens. Okay, so look that stuff up. Don't listen to what they tell you on the freaking news. They're lying to you. Look it up for yourself. That's why I tell people that about me and about what's going on. Don't believe anything that I've said. Look it all up for yourself. Learn. Go down that rabbit hole. Okay, let's play some more Raw because I've been talking too much. I'm going to shut up and we'll play some more Raw. If you guys have any questions, please type them in the chat. I'll leave my glasses on here so I can read them and I won't miss them.
However, the important point is that the graduations from density to density do occur. The positive/negative polarity is a thing which will, at the 6th level, simply become history. Therefore, we speak in an illusory time continuum when we discuss statistics of positive versus negative harvest into 5th.
See, that's what I was referring to when I said when you get into the 6th, by that time your energy, you're no longer of the physical, and the positive and negative goes away. So when people say, I don't have an ego. Yeah, you're going to have an ego. It's still going to be there all the way to the 6th. So even in the 4th and the 5th, your ego is going to be less and less and less, but it's still going to be in the back of your mind. So you need to realize that. You don't lose your ego until halfway through the 6th density. So when you're halfway through the 6th dimension, after that, there cannot be any more evil. There is none going forward. Going to the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. There is no more ego. Evil is stuck there. That's true purgatory. You can be as evil as you want going all the way halfway through the 6th dimension, and then you're stuck there. You can never get. So when I was referring to this equality of the good versus evil and that evil is just as strong as good, not true at all. They want you to believe that. That's why they can't believe there is a creator or a God, because to acknowledge that, it has to acknowledge that they are also a construct that is not equal to the creator or the logos. So they have to convince you that they are just as powerful as God by diminishing God or telling you God doesn't actually exist and that we're in charge. On a spiritual level, they'll say the devil and God are equal. They need you desperately to believe that, because that way you will fear them and evil people as much. The devil's going to get you. You have to fear that the devil is just as powerful as God to fear the devil at all. Because if you realize what everybody else was teaching, Jesus and all of those savior characters throughout time, they were telling you, and those books were taken out of the Bible by Constantine, completely eradicated, and then they were hunting the Essenes down, who were the people, the religious sect that wanted to keep that information, and they had to bury that stuff in the Dead Sea, and they all got killed for it. They sacrificed their lives to preserve that knowledge, knowing that somebody in the future would find that knowledge, and Cassie and I talked about that when we were off air today. Okay, let's continue here. So they're desperate for you to believe that they're just as equal to, if not stronger than God. They're desperate. You have to believe them. That's the only way they can have power over you, is they have to have you believe that they have power.
A large percentage of 4th density negative entities continue the negative path from 4th to 5th density experience, for without wisdom the compassion and desire to aid other self is not extremely well informed. Thus, though one loses approximately 2% moving from negative to positive during the 4th density experience, we find approximately 8% of graduations into 5th density, those of the negative. 47.6 Questioner: well, what I was actually asking was if 50% is required.
See, before I go into that question, so here it's 14% that is evil, but out of the 14% that's evil, there's only about 3% that graduate on the evil side. And or 4 or 5%. And then he was saying that I can't say they, I'm using the wrong vernacular. Ra said just there what that percentage is. Let me back that up a little bit so you can hear that again. In the 4th dimension, that actually graduates to the 5th dimension on the evil side. That gets smaller and smaller, is my point, of the amount of people that are. So the dynamic is 14% that is evil on the planet now, but out of that 14%, not all 14% graduate, because you have to be 95% evil or above to graduate. Anybody below that doesn't graduate to the next, doesn't move up to the 4th. So you have to be really evil to move up to the 4th, and that number is low, and that number gets less and less from the 14% to the 8% to down, as you go into as the dynamic changes, until it's less and less and less. And then in the 6%, halfway through the 6th dimension or density, it's 0% from that point on. So I think he said 2% right there. So it's 4% here, and we'll play it again. I think he said 2% of the, I'm getting told the 18% is the maximum number of any 4th dimensional. They're telling me this now from up there. Any 4th dimensional beingness or logos in this galaxy, in the Milky Way galaxy, 14% is the highest 4th dimensional. 18% is the highest 4th dimensional possibility of evil being existing in the fourth, and then it gets less going to the fifth and to the sixth. So here we only have 14%, not 18, 14%. But of the 18% that's evil, only 2%, I think he says, can actually graduate. So it gets less and less as it moves on. Let's play this.
The compassion and desire to aid other self is not extremely well informed. Thus, though one loses approximately 2% moving from negative to positive during the fourth density experience, we find approximately 8% of graduations into fifth density, those of the negative.
See, so 8%, so it's the same as here. So about 8%, that's why I said I'm getting 4 to 6 and possibly 8%. 8% here move up of the 14% that are evil, and the rest of them can't graduate. And so you have to be really evil. And then it's the same number of there, and it's of the lesser people because they're more evil there. But then it becomes less and less amount of people that graduate each time. So the majority goes up and up and up of the amount that is, but the percentage goes down, down, down. So here it's 14%, there it's 8%. And of that, right, so that you lose 2% in the change. This is what he's saying. And then when you get to the 5%, and then it's going to be, instead of 8%, it's going to be only 6%. And of that 6%, it's only going to be 2% that can graduate. And then when you go into this, so by the time you get to the 6%, it's going to be 1% of the population is going to be evil, and none of them can graduate. Do you see my point? So the percentage goes up of how many that are possibly can graduate, but the percentage of people that are the total number goes down, 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 down until it's equal at 1%, and then they're stuck there forever. 1% of the population of the realms that are sixth density halfway through are evil, and they can't go anywhere until they change their mind, and then they get to move up. Okay, so let's continue.
47.6 questioner. Well, what I was actually asking was if 50% is required for graduation from third to fourth in the positive sense, 95% is required for graduation in the negative sense. Does this have to more closely approach 100% in both cases for graduation from fourth to fifth? Does an entity have to be 99% polarized for negative and maybe 80% polarized for positive graduation from fourth to fifth?
No,
Ra,
that's close.
I am Ra. We perceive the query now. To give this in your terms is misleading, for there are, shall we say, visual aids or training aids available in fourth density which automatically aid the entity in polarization while cutting down extremely upon the quick effect of catalyst. Thus the density above yours must take up more space/time. The percentage of service to others of positively oriented entities will harmoniously approach 98% in intention. The qualifications for fifth density, however, involve understanding. This then becomes the primary qualification for graduation from fourth to fifth density. To achieve this graduation, the entity must be able to understand the actions, the movements, and the dance. There is no percentage describable which measures this understanding. It is
right. I've talked about that, where there's some things that I just can't describe to you here. And that's one of those that's hard to understand because you're going on percentage, because we have to be 51% in service to others down here to graduate. And they have to be 95% evil to graduate down here. But when you move to the next, 86% of the people here are in service to self, but you only have to be 50%, 51% to graduate. When you move to the fourth density, 98% of those in service to others are literally, out of the 100% of people who are in service to self, everyone is 98% to the good. And we're here just trying to make 51% to get out of here. And they're already pushed up to 98% just by being there. That's how much changes when you leave this place and move to the next place. And because you have to realize that evil people are not living on the same planet as good people there. They come down and they can infiltrate, and some of them are here now on this earth that are evil, that are infiltrating, that are here, but they're here specifically to do damage either to the fourth dimension, and more specifically, they're usually soldiers that are using psychic abilities to attack people like me, Carla, here in the third dimension. And they're doing that from the fourth dimension by occupying the same space as me in the fourth, and then crossing over the dimension to do damage to me, or create doubt in my ego, or get into my ear and speak negative stuff and try to convince me to live in fear, whatever they can do. Okay. But it's not like now where you can be married to somebody who's in service to self, or your dad or your mom could be one of those people, friends of yours that you didn't know, that all of a sudden one day you're like, I think that person's evil. I didn't recognize that before, because you can't hide as easily there. It becomes harder. It's easy to hide here because this is the first place, and 99% of all people don't have any idea how to sense who's evil and who's not. Only those who choose to be in service to others learn that ability. People who are in service to self, all of them develop that ability. They know how to see their prey. They know that you're not evil, and they will take advantage of that because you don't know they're evil, because they can hide from you. Okay. And that's how they Jedi mind trick you. All right, let's continue here.
Is a measure of efficiency of perception. It may be measured by light. The ability to love, accept.
Right. Understanding the movement patterns and dance. Right. Let me replay that. And then maybe we'll talk about that. Cassie, did you bring that up because you wanted me to talk a little bit about that? Let me back that up so you can hear that again, what Ra just said. Understanding. So now you're not having to be 51%. There's no percentage of what you need to be to graduate into the fifth. Now what you need to know is you need to understand the movement and the dance. Let me back up a little bit to that. We'll replay it here. I think I went back too far, but we'll replay it.
Ra. We perceive the query now. To give this in your terms is misleading, for there are, shall we say, visual aids or training aids available in fourth density which automatically aid the entity in polarization while cutting down extremely upon the quick effect of catalyst. Thus the density above yours must take up more space/time. The percentage of service to others of positively oriented entities will harmoniously approach 98% in intention. The qualifications for fifth density, however, involve understanding. This then becomes the primary qualification for graduation from fourth to fifth density. To achieve this graduation, the entity must be able to understand the actions, the movements, and the dance. There is no percentage describable which measures this understanding.
Yeah.
It is a measure of efficiency of perception. It may be measured by light. The ability to love, accept, and use a certain intensity of light thus creates the requirement for both positive and negative fourth to fifth harvesting. 47.7 Questioner, can you define what you mean by a crystallized entity? Ra.
Right before he gets into the actions. So actions speak louder than words. The concept is introduced to us here. Do you see? And it means not as much to us here as actions speak louder than words, because this is the place of doing. So actions in the place of doing are show me, right? I'm from Missouri, show me. That's a saying here in America, especially if you're from Missouri. I'm not. But I know people that were. My father-in-law was from Missouri. But so that's the whole concept. The people that live in Missouri will tell you that. Show me. So actions speak louder than words. Well, in the fourth dimension, that becomes a thing. That is the catalyst. The requirement for graduation is actions speak louder than words. But it's not actions speak louder than words like a here in the place of doing, because in that place, you're no longer in the place of doing. You're moving up into the higher chakra. So you're starting to access the green ray and above that. And you're moving away from the bottom three chakras. However, there's still some of that come into play because you don't lose all of those faculties. However, the body of the people who are on the earth in fourth dimension are not bipedal humanoid hominids like us. Okay. They look kind of like us, but their legs are a little bit less. They're kind of transparent. Start losing the physical body. So they're different looking, and it's hard for me to explain to you what they look like because it is kind of alien. They do resemble us, but it's enough to where if you saw one now, you'd freak out. So they're not a bipedal. You're kind of floating above the ground a little, so the lower extremities are starting to fade. They don't have any feet like we do that are touching the ground, but they're kind of there like a ghost that's there. And as you move up in the fourth, that kind of goes away and your torso starts becoming see-through. Right. So you can kind of start seeing the organs, but that's natural and you're born to it. So it doesn't bother anyone. So there's no culture shock because your mind wiped a little bit more, but a little bit less in some ways there. And so you don't have, you have memory of being here, but you don't have any misconceptions of the change because you were born to it and it's natural, but you can access the lower just like you can here. Like now you can't remember being a cat or a dog or whatever. But then you start having a little bit more memory. Your memory is less mind wiped when you move up. It's a lot less. And so it's still rare that people access all knowledge, but you're not, you then have memory from life to life, where here we don't, we get mind wiped. There you don't have that mind wipe, so the veil is a lot thinner, but there's still aspects of what you're supposed to learn that you're supposed to organically learn. So there, that part of the veiling goes away. Even those of us who are unveiled, there's still that organicness that we're supposed to be learning. I still set down this life. You don't get to come in life and come down here, even as a wanderer, without designing what to learn extracurricular. So I'm learning things that I wanted to brush up on in this life that I'm getting extra credit for myself for, as well as doing all of this to help people. So there's things that about my own future that I can't see because I'm supposed to organically go through it, even though I'm unveiled, and I can tell you about where my soul was originated. I can tell you how many trillions of lifetimes I've been alive, and I can look into the future. But when you look into the future, it gets harder and harder when you don't have a point of reference to understand what it looks like there. Because just me trying to explain to you what people on this earth currently look like in the fourth dimension is really hard for me to describe in these words and terms that won't freak you out. It's just the way it is. And then if I'm going to tell you about the fifth going into the sixth or the seventh, that will freak you out. That's why we can just tell you you're mostly light by that time. By the time you go into the seventh, you're a light floating in the air. Everyone is. And you can change your color to be independent, right? But you already are moving into a hive complex. So you're a bright light that is mass consciousness now. But you still have memory of being. So all of the physical features that we have here go away quickly once you leave here. Those start moving away because if you're in transitioning in service to others, you're losing the physical body because you're moving back towards source. So you're becoming pure energy. Eventually, you're going to look like a ball of light. You're going to look like the sun. You're going to look like what everybody shows God as in the sky. You're going to be a ball of light, and that's going to be the collective consciousness. You're going to be a star. You're going to be the Milky Way galaxy, the light coming from the entire Milky Way galaxy. If you looked at it from a distance, you'll have that consciousness. You'll be aware of yourself in that light, but you won't be going, but I'm this person way down there as a tree on that planet. You won't even care about that anymore because that's no longer part of what you need to be concerned with. So that's why you don't think about, I was a dog last time and I was scratching my nuts or licking myself in my butt. You don't think about that here because it's no longer important. It's not something that it plays into any part of what you're here to learn in this place. Same thing happens in the next one. Every level up you go, you return to help those behind you in some way, be it physically coming down here or psychically contacting people until you get to the 8th dimension. And then it's only through psychic ability coming down to aid people as maybe a guide or something, coming down in that respect just to help. But then after that, you don't talk about anything that's up there, and they don't talk about anything going on down here except for to help answer questions. Like in the halls of the Mente, you can go there and you can literally contact somebody, Jesus in the 8th dimension or in the 7th dimension, and ask him questions, and you'll hear God. It'll sound like God talking to you from the heavens in your head, and you can have communication, and maybe other people next to you can hear that. Wow, that was Jesus, bro. That was booming voice. That was kind of scary and overwhelming. But then if Jesus appears to you, it will be Jesus floating in the light because it's a thought construct of Jesus. It's not the physical manifestation anymore. Ra, just from the 4th dimension, coming to Earth, came here in a physical thought form manifestation. They weren't physically here. They came down here and projected and created, using the logos, created a body that everybody here thought was real and could touch and taste and smell. And they were just a construct mentally created and then built the pyramids. A lot of people don't want to know about that, though. They want to say the pyramids were built by people picking up a big, large stone, like somebody had on Facebook, where they showed 150 guys holding up this big, large stone. And one guy loved his comment. He says, I'm not as much impressed by the guys holding up the stone as I am that there was someone with a camera 5,000 years ago that took this picture. I thought that was great. I thought that was badass because true. That's like when I had a picture that I posted that showed this big giant camera, old school camera from the 1800s. And these guys, it was huge. These guys were climbing on it and they were building it. And it said, the first camera ever made. And there was a picture of Captain Jean-Luc Picard from the Star Trek, The Next Generation, played by Patrick Stewart. And he's going at the camera like this and going, and it says, well, then who the fuck took that picture then? Because there was a picture of guys in black and white building a camera, and the caption said the very first camera ever made. And somebody looked at that picture and then made a meme that said, well, then who the fuck took this picture of them? I love that. I posted it because of that, right? He's going, who the fuck took this picture then if that was the very first camera ever made? Same thing. You see all these Egyptians holding up these stones, carrying them up to the pyramid, and you're sitting there looking at it and you're like, yeah, that's how they built the pyramids. And I'm like, really? How'd they take this picture? If this was 5,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, who took this picture then? So obviously that was a movie set, or the entire thing was fabricated in the 21st century, because there was nobody around with a camera because it wasn't invented yet to take a picture of the Egyptians holding up the stone and moving it. Loved that. That was just on Facebook the other day.
I am Ra. We have used this particular term because it has a fairly precise meaning in your language. When a crystalline structure is formed of your physical material, the elements present in each molecule are bonded in a regularized fashion with the elements in each other molecule. Thus the structure is regular and, when fully and perfectly crystallized, has certain properties. It will not splinter or break. It is very strong without effort, and it is radiant, traducing light into a beautiful refraction, giving pleasure of the eye to many. 47.8 Questioner. In our esoteric literature, numerous bodies are listed. I have here a list of the physical body, the etheric, the emotional, the astral, and the mental. Can you tell me if this listing is the proper number, and can you tell me the uses and purposes and effects, etc., of each of these or any other bodies that may be in our mind/body/spirit complex? Ra. I am Ra. To answer your query fully would be the work of many sessions such as this one, for the interrelationships of the various bodies and each body's effects in various situations is an enormous study. However, we shall begin by referring your minds back to the spectrum of true colors and the usage of this understanding in grasping the various densities of your octave. We have the number 7 repeated from the macrocosm to the microcosm in structure and experience. Therefore, it would only be expected that there would be 7 basic bodies which we would perhaps be most lucid by stating as red ray body, etc.
7 DNA strands. Remember, we talked about that. However,
we are aware that you wish to correspond these bodies mentioned with the color rays. This will be confusing, for various teachers have offered their teach/learning understanding in various terms. Thus one may name a subtle body one thing and another find a different name. The red ray body is your chemical body. However, it is not the body which you have as clothing in the physical. It is the unconstructed material of the body, the elemental body without form. This basic unformed material body is important to understand, for there are healings which may be carried out by the simple understanding of the elements present in the physical vehicle. The orange ray body is the physical body complex. This body complex is still not the body you inhabit, but rather the body formed without self-awareness, the body in the womb before the spirit/mind complex enters. This body may live without the inhabitation of the mind and spirit complexes. However, it seldom does so. The yellow ray body is your physical vehicle which you know of at this time and in which you experience catalyst. This body has the mind/body/spirit characteristics and is equal to the physical illusion, as you have called it. The green ray body is that body which may be seen in seance when what you call ectoplasm is furnished. This is a lighter body packed more densely with life. You may call this the astral body following some other teachings. Others have called this same body the etheric body. However, this is not correct in the sense that the etheric body is that body of gateway wherein intelligent energy is able to mold the mind/body/spirit complex. The light body or blue ray body may be called the devachanic body. There are many other names for this body, especially in your so-called Indian sutras or writings, for there are those among these peoples which have explored these regions and understand the various types of devachanic bodies. There are many. Many types of bodies in each density, much like your own. The indigo ray body, which we choose to call the etheric body, is, as we have said, the gateway body. In this body form is substance, and you may only see this body as that of light, as it may mold itself as it desires.
Okay, so this is why you see people making a differentiation between soul and spirit, because they're saying the soul body and the spirit body. And I say that they're blended into one, but they're correct. And this is why I never correct them and say that's wrong. So whenever I see that, and I've posted that, where it'll say soul body, spirit body, because the soul body is the heart chakra and the spirit body is the third eye. Okay, and the only difference between those is that the soul body is the catalyst to the realization that I am more than this, and I am in the fourth density. And then the spirit body is when you can move into the soul body, and you move above the thinking mind, the reach of the thinking mind, and above the ego, and you come into your consciousness, as your spirit or consciousness. And once you realize that is the indigo ray body, that's coming up here now, moving into the purple, and and above that into the light. And so each chakra is a different form of physical body, and that's why he's saying that there's seven, right? 7 chakras, 7 forms of the physical body. The place of doing is the yellow. So the yellow body is this. The one prior, and that's the one that the soul occupies as an avatar. But when you're in the womb, that's why he's saying that you could have no soul in that body and give birth to a soulless body, but they rarely will live for any length of time because there's no soul driving the ego or driving the logos that is this physical body to continue to go. So if you have a soulless body born, that body will die because there's no soul occupying it to keep it alive. So it'll end up dying. So this is what we're talking. So truly the chakras, each chakra is an energy center, but it's also a physical representation in the first dimension, second dimension, third dimension, and so on. So it's a physical representation down here inside of everything that is a spiritual representation as well. As within, so without. As below, so above. So it's literally first dimension. You can be a first dimensional thing, and that is what? A physical thing. That's a physical body. Tree, flower, bug. Not a bug, that's 2 dimension. Right? Air, rock, the earth itself, just dirt. It's a physical thing. That's a body. So that would be the red ray. And then you have the orange ray, and the orange ray is a 2-dimensional. Now you're a tree that's growing, or a plant that's growing, and then you have a third, also a 2-dimensional that is now a higher 2-dimensional being, a fish, a dog, a cat, a bird, a lizard, a snake, a deer, a bear, whatever, a horse. Okay, and those, you have to be one of those to on this planet to become a self-aware. Do you see? And then you become the physical body that is here as a human being. All right, let's continue. Sorry, let me start.
The violet ray body may perhaps be understood as what you might call the Buddha body, or that body which is complete. Each of these bodies has an effect upon your mind/body/spirit complex in your life beingness. The interrelationships, as we have said, are many and complex. Perhaps one suggestion that may be indicated is this: the indigo ray body may be used by the healer once the healer becomes able to place its consciousness in this etheric state. The violet ray or Buddhic body is of equal efficacy to the healer, for within it lies a sense of wholeness which is extremely close to unity with all that there is. These bodies are part of each entity, and the proper use of them and understanding of them is, though far advanced from the standpoint of third density harvest, nevertheless useful to the adept. 47.9 Questioner: which bodies do we have immediately after physical death from this yellow ray body that I now inhabit? Ra. I am Ra. You have all bodies in potentiation. 47.10 Questioner: then the yellow ray body in potentiation is used to create the chemical arrangement that I have as a physical body now. Is this correct?
We were just moving, Stephanie, we're just moving into I was describing basically what he's talking about now. We're just moving into that, explaining the different bodies that manifest as we move up, which are basically the chakras and the colors. And so Ra said it's going to get confusing because Ra is giving the analogy of the chakras in the physical plane now, not just the energy centers, but in the physical plane, and how those transfer and materialize in the physical. And I was just reiterating that. So you didn't really miss much, truly, unless you don't know anything about chakras, in which case that might be confusing what I was just trying to tell you. But otherwise, it's not too crazy what you missed while you're ordering that. But this is a great book, man. I don't know these people, and I'm not going to make any money off of it. I don't know George. I don't know Ines. But the information that's in here I know is actual because I already knew this stuff myself. Talk about some of it in my book, and they go into far more detail than I do because my book is general education. These guys are really bringing out the Hebrew Western Judeo-Christian Bible and telling you what the ancients, what it really meant to the ancients, what the Hebrews knew, and what even the Christians knew when Jesus was around, and what everybody knew until 12,000 years ago. They changed things, but all of it was eradicated after Jesus came. That's why he came again. And if you look back in history from 12,000 years to now, you'll see that the Jesus character came in a couple of different guises then, and came to this earth to give this information. But then again, the Savior character is in all religions prior to that. But this tells you what the Christ within meant before the physical manifestation of Jesus, the actual being that was here, and why Jesus came as Jesus, the Christ. And they don't say this is why, but they explain to you what the Christos is. I have talked about it. I talk about that in my book, and go back to the etymology of the Greeks and the Sanskrit and what that means. That'll be in my book. They do the same thing, and I posted a video in the chat. And if you're interested, I can give you the video again because I know that you weren't on the chat because you said you were new. Message me on Messenger after the show, and I'll get the video from YouTube where they talk about it, and I'll send it to you, forward it to you so you can watch it, and it'll talk about the Christ energy, the Christos, that is an oil that happens within your body. I don't know what your sun sign is, Stephanie, but whatever your sun sign is, I'm a Virgo. So for Virgos, next week, a week from today, we go into that 2.5 day, that 3-day time period where the oil comes and is secreted by the Pingala and the Idala, the optic thalamus, the third eye, and in the brain. And the two oils, this is the land of milk and honey. One is a milk-like substance, and the other one is a honey. One is charged with electricity, and the other one is charged with magnetism. And those two oils go through the Ida and the Pingala nerves and go down the spine all the way to Bethlehem, to the manger. And then the two of those unite, and that's the seed that is born, the Jesus seed. And Jesus ascends the 33 runs of Jacob's ladder to the 33rd age, and where he's crucified when Jesus dies at 33 is the spinal column, the 33 vertebrae, goes back up into the pneumogastric nerve and sits there dormant. And there's the crucifixion where it dies. It lays dormant for 2.5 days. And then it will, if I don't have sex and I don't drink alcohol and I don't eat crap food, and I meditate and sleep properly in that 3-day time period, it will then become the light of the world. Jesus is the light of the world, and it will illuminate my optic thalamus and illuminate every brain cell that I have, and then that will illuminate my entire body structure, and it literally uplifts you, and your ascension goes up a little bit more of a run every time. Whatever your sun sign is, the sun will move into your moon for 2.5 days. So whatever your sun sign is, whatever month you were born in, gives you a sun sign. And there is a chart that you can learn. I posted it for people to see. Melissa, welcome. Melissa said, hi friends, welcome. And there's a website where you can see exactly what time, wherever you are on the world, what time the sun moves into your moon sign. And for that time period, or the moon moves into your sun sign. So I'm a Virgo, and that's my sun sign. And the moon of the earth will be in Virgo next Friday. I don't know the exact time. I'd have to look on my phone on the chart. next Friday or Thursday or Friday. And then for 3 days, 2.5 days, the moon will be in Virgo. And at the end of that, that is when the oil will then go and pop. It mixes together. And then when it does that, it gets charged with energy from all of my chakras, and it releases over 1,000 times more powerful than it is if I eat of the tree of life. If you do something and eat of the tree of life by drinking alcohol, having sex, and squandering that sexual alchemy, then that will be released out through your body when you have an orgasm. And that's when Santa Claus gives you coal. That's when you get coal, because there's a coal-like substance that is released into the brain that is a physically euphoric feeling, like a hormone that you get, an endorphin that you get from sexual release. So if you spend the energy in sex, then that energy goes into your partner and you guys share that energy, so you can have really great sex by squandering that, but that's eating of the tree of life. They talk about that in The God Man, and I talk about that in my book, which will be coming out in probably 2 or 3 months. But that's not the majority of what my book is about. But that was what the spirituality was of this planet that all religions knew for all of time until 12,000 years ago, and specifically after that, because Jesus came, the last time he came, this time he came as Jesus, and that was 2,000 years ago, almost in 2033, it'll be 2,000 years ago. When he was here, but he was actually born around the year 3 or 4, so it's going to be more like 2036 to 2037. My brother and I have been doing the math. Both of us being theologians and ministers, we've been doing the math and looking into it. And everybody thinks Jesus was born 0 year or year 1. He wasn't. He was born, I think, around 3 or 4. We talked about the year 3 or 4, and so truth. Everybody would think the year 2033 would be the 2,000 years since Jesus was born. But the truth is, it's going to be more like 2037 in real life. But 2032 is going to be the crazy weird activation. So again, the earth is setting up things that are going to change. So this oil secretes in your body every month. Like I said, I don't know what your sun sign is, so maybe you said in the audience, but whatever it is, whatever your sun sign is, I'm a Virgo, I was born in September. If you're a Virgo, coming up next week is that time period. And if you don't drink alcohol at all for those 3 days, and usually you should just, take a day or 2 off before that if you drink every day, don't have any sex in that time period, meditate, sleep well, eat properly, and get enough sleep in that time period, that's not eating of the tree of life. And that's the tithing that you pay. The 10% that you return to the Lord is that 10% that is charged by you not debauching yourself for that time period. No processed food, no McDonald's, Taco Bell, whatever. Eat good, maybe just eat carrots and whatever, eat vegetables or whatever and fruits for a couple of days and do that fasting that way, and don't eat crap and don't do that stuff whenever that is. If you're a Virgo, that's next week. And then you'll be surprised that things will change. You'll feel a difference. And sometimes when it pops, you go, whoa, that was weird. What just happened? I had that happen to me, and I was like, whoa, I forgot. Yeah, I didn't look at the time of when it started. And like 2 p.m, all of a sudden I went, well, that's weird. And I'm very in tune with myself. And so I looked at the time and went, aha, that literally 2.5 days ended just now. And I was unaware of that, and went, and I could feel this in my head and the illumination from that. That is Jesus becoming the light of the world. And the Christos is what the ancient Egyptians, and that's a Greek word, the ancient Greeks called this oil. The Christos means Christ. Okay. So literally before Jesus was born, 4,000 years before Jesus was born, the entire world called this oil the Christ oil. Okay. And the Vikings have this Santa Claus. Okay. And why is that? Because Tanta is the word for auntie, grandma. Tia comes from the Latin for auntie. Tanta is grandma. Santa is grandpa. So Kris Kringle became Santa Claus. The Claus comes from the claustrum. The claustrum in your brain is like a chimney. And that oil goes through the claustrum. And if you're good, be good for goodness sake. Don't be bad, right? Santa Claus is coming to town. Is the same thing. If you don't eat for the tree of life, if you don't cry, don't pout, don't be bad, be good for goodness sake, you get the present When Santa returns through the chimney, goes down the chimney and back up, he leaves a present for you. That is a story told by the Vikings to children of the Christ oil. And so the Vikings didn't have any wherewithal or knowing from what the Greeks and the Romans and the Egyptians knew. Well, apparently they all knew the same thing. As a theologian, we learn this around the world. So my book, The Reality About Reality, Returning to the Old Ways, is like God-man. They're trying to get you to understand what everyone knew on this earth before it was taken from you. And Ra is telling you that at a certain time in history, and Ra said, we came here 11,000 years ago, and the information was corrupted and taken control of 12,000 years ago. There's that number again. Do you see? 12,000 years ago, something changed on this earth and evil people took control of this matrix. Do you see? The Anunnaki got here 12,000 years ago. Okay, Anunnaki doesn't mean what you think it means, but those of you who know that word and think that that's a whole race of people, that was the Orion Crusaders. They got here, apparently from our perspective, 12,000 years ago. Truth is, they got here in about 1938, but they had access to the past, the present, and the future. So that means they're going to still have some residual effects of this earth for the next 12,000 years, but it's going to wane, and be gone. Do you see? But the past, they changed things in the distant past because their footprint started 12,000 years ago. The Patal got here 10,000 years ago. That means right after they got here, this entire different race got here, but they had to have a footprint. So no one knows the time shifted, and no one has memory of that DNA. And all the memory goes to they were here 10,000 years ago. So now there's a type O negative DNA that's 10,000 years old. The truth is, that DNA actually arrived here about 1940 on the earth. But because there has to be a past, because here there's separation, past, present, and future. When you come down here, you have to have a representation. That's how that works here. You're just unaware of that. You have to have a footprint that goes backwards in time. So if you get here now, if they got here in 1940 to now, that's 80 years. That means that they go backwards 10,000 years. Do you see? So that means 1938 goes back 12,000 years. That's a dynamic that if you're brand new to this, you don't understand the concept of what I'm saying to you, and we call that quantum weirdness in the physics field, that on a subatomic level, that includes smoking. Yes, no smoking for that couple of days would be a better option, or limit the amount of nicotine that you put in there. Okay, so you're a Cancer. All right, so Cancer is, what is that, March? So your birthday was just in March, right? I think that's what a Cancer is, March. Don't quote me, I don't know. But if you look on the website, I can send that to you as well, Stephanie. So if you want to see that video, and if you want to know the website, contact me on Messenger. If you're on Facebook, on Messenger, or get somebody to add you to the Law of One chat group that are in here. Cassie can do that. Denise can do that. Anybody that's here, Peter, any of those guys can do that and add you to that chat on Messenger. And then we can link you these, and you can look those up and chart your I have mine on my phone. On my calendar goes all the way out to 2026, 2027 now, I think. So that I have literally, it goes bling and tells me, and I literally say, don't have sex for 3 days. And I'm like, bling, oh yeah. And then it has the time. I put it at the exact time. The only thing it changes if you're in the United States and the time changes, spring forward and falls back, when you look at that website after the time change, it'll change. So if you had it listed, I found this out by accident, I didn't think about it. And I set it in my thing. And then I looked at it after the time change and went, why is this off by an hour? I thought that this was earlier than that. Now it's later. Why? And I was like, oh, the time change. So mine says it starts at 2 p.m. But now that we've sprung forward, it actually says 1 p.m. on my calendar. Right? Or my calendar says 2 p.m. and it's actually 1 p.m. Do you see what I'm saying? It's backwards. So if you want that information, yes, please. Okay, so somebody, Cassie, if you're here, or Peter, could you guys add Stephanie to the Law of One chat? Please, and if you can't, let me know and I'll do it. And then I'll send you the link to the video on YouTube. You can watch that video that it'll explain to you what they actually talk about in this, what the Christos is. It explains all of that, and the optic thalamus and Santa Claus. And I talk about that in my book and to give you that entire explanation as well. But it's a video. There's several of them. I'll send you this one, and then we can link you the website. I'll link both of those to you after the show, which I'll be getting off here shortly. I'll link you the website, and you can look up your sun sign and then see when the moon is going to move into your sun sign. So, and it's literally going to be 2.5 days. That's what it always does to every sun sign. It just moves through all the sun signs in order, the order that they are. So after Virgo, it's going to go to whatever October is. It'll move into that, and then November, then December. So if you're March, it'll be yours was before mine, because March, April, May, June, July, August, September, right? So you have October, November, December, January, February, March to come back around to, but it'll be once a month. So that means it'll be 3, 6, 9, 12 days or so, a couple of weeks from now, it'll move into to March, if Cancer's March, whatever it is, it'll move into, Stephanie said, July, right? July. Okay, so you're in July. You're on the cusp then, because isn't July like no, August is Leo, so July. Okay, so July. So you just happened August, September, because it's moving in next week. So you probably were just a few days ago. If July, because it'll be 3 days, or it's coming up for you. It might actually be, if mine is a week from now, then yours. That's a week. That's 7 days. So yours is gonna hit you. If you're July, it's going to be in the next 3 days to 6 days is going to be your 3-day time period. So I'll get that to you right when the show's over to make sure you have that, because you're coming up. So if you're July, because I'm September and mine is a week from now, yours is going to be 6 days prior to that. 3 days, 3 days. So yours should be 6 days. It should be happening tomorrow or the next day for you. So I'll get it to you tonight, and you can verify that. And if that's the case, no sex, no alcohol, don't eat crap food, and if you smoke, try to back off or quit for 3 days, 2.5 days. And that oil is already gone down. If it's you're going to be in the next few days. That oil is going down your spine now and is going to the lowest part of your spine, which is called Bethlehem, the manger. And it goes there and it mixes together, and then it comes back up with the Kundalini energy, because it is the Kundalini and the Kundalini buffer energy, the masculine and feminine. It's going to go through, and as it goes through all of your chakras, starting with the base root red ray chakra, it gets charged by the chakra energy of every chakra as it goes back up the 33 vertebrae of your spinal column. And then it's going to stop there on the day that your 3 days starts. It stops at the base of your brain, at Golgotha, where Jesus was crucified, at the base of your spine, and it sits in that place for 2.5 days. That's the crucifixion. Jesus died and was resurrected in 2.5 days. He died and came back to life 3 days later. That is exactly the physical manifestation of what happens to you spiritually, the Jesus within. The way to heaven is through me, Jesus said. Okay? So literally yours will be hitting you in the next few days. And for that 3-day time period, if you don't do any eating of the tree of life and don't live of the flesh in that time period, that oil will then explode and illuminate your optic thalamus, your third eye, and then illuminate all of your brain cells. And then that will illuminate all of the cells in your entire body instantaneously. And that happens to every single human, every single month, in that 2-day time period, whatever your sun sign is, whenever the moon moves into that sun sign, and that happens once a month for every single person. And then the one that hits you in December is the Santa Claus one, is the Christ. That's why Jesus' birthday is supposed to be in December, even though he wasn't born in December. If the day of conception was in October, Jesus couldn't have been born in December, because he was either born in 2 months or he was born in 14 months. And he wasn't. So Jesus' birth was somewhere in July in real life. But they moved it because the God dies at December 24th, 25th, Christmas. The God dies and is resurrected right now in springtime and gives life to the world. That's the cyclical nature of the physical manifestation of the cycle of life on this earth. We're right now in springtime. If you're in the North American continent, northern hemisphere of the planet, you're in the birth. If you're in the southern hemisphere of the planet, you're in the death of the God. So our planet works in halves. The top half is now the renewal. The bottom half is the death. When we go through, we'll go through the ages of summer and into autumn and fall, and the green man starts to wane, and then that'll be the birth on the southern hemisphere, and everything flips back and forth, going from life to death, life to death, life to death, and that's the yin and the yang, the Vesica Pisces. That is this way for the yin and the yang, right? But it's this way for the Vesica Pisces, and the yin and yang is supposed to be that way, right? And so that's literally that, and that's what's going on right now. It's happening in the body. Okay. Yes, I will. I'll put the after the show's over, Cassie. She said, please link that in the chat. After the show, I will link. I'm going to get off here right now because I got to get dinner going, and I'll link that to you first. I'll get both videos up, and then I'll get dinner going because I'm just going to reheat some stuff that I made the other day. So I'm going to get off here right now. Hopefully you put Stephanie in there, and anybody else that wants to get in there, let Cassie know right quick, because I'm about to end the show, that you also want to get into the Law of One chat group, and then I will link both the video for you to watch that explains what I just was explaining about that oil that all of the people in history for the entire planet knew about, that has been eradicated by the Orion Crusaders. You know them as the Anunnaki currently. That knowledge was taken from you, and all the religions were corrupted not to teach it anymore, but it's still there. And this book explains to you how it's still there in the Bible. And I do that in my book as well, that'll be coming out later this year, that I explain how and when that changed. And I've explained it kind of to you now. So those of you who stayed this long, you're getting a preview of my book that will be coming out later this year. And I try to do that to reward anyone who stays here at the end of the show. You guys get the best information. And the beginning of the show is low vibration, and I pull you up out of that into a high vibration. And I usually lose most of the lower vibration people who don't hear this, because they just are like, you're crazy, I'm out. This guy's stupid. And they go. And those of you who stay around get to hear the best knowledge. You get the Easter eggs that they don't get. Okay. So let me cut off of here. Now you're in Colorado. Okay. So you know, you're here in the United States. Okay. So as soon as I get off here, I'll link the video so you can watch that. And then I'll link that website, and then you can look up to find out, verify, and plot when the moon moves into your sun sign. And if you have any questions after I'm cooking and while I'm eating and cooking, I'll answer those in the chat. Cassie will be there if she's not busy, and Peter will be there, and probably Anna. So there's going to be some people that will be in the chat that can answer questions for you if I can't get to you right away. But since you are in the United States, I'll get dinner going, and while I'm eating dinner, I'll look in the chat and I'll answer any questions that you have and communicate that to you. But I'll let you have time to watch that video that explains everything. It's about 15 minutes long, maybe 20 minutes long. That explains everything. And there's this guy who's going to be talking is a doctor. He's a scientist. So he's going to be telling you the physiology. There's a whole chapter on it in here that explains everything. When I was reading that, I was like, was that the same guy? I actually looked him up to see if he was one of the people that wrote this, because he, like me, explains it so much like the book that they wrote that I'm like, wow, people when they read my book are going to think I plagiarized this, because I'm telling that, and it's the same description. And that guy in the video had the same description that they have in this book. And I don't think he read this book because he knew the knowledge before this book came out, because that video dates back before this. I knew that same knowledge before I read this. So this is the knowledge that you can unlock as you start to ascend. It's universal enlightenment. True enlightenment is universal enlightenment. When you choose, I am no longer in service to self, and I am no longer not in service to others, and that I want to be in service to others, and you make that choice and you start living that way of life, everything in your life changes. And then you get these downloads. And when you get the big downloads, you start accessing stuff that will blow your mind. And the more you start doing that, the more you start talking to people, your circle of friends and family gets a lot smaller because people think you're crazy. And then you start seeking out other like-minded people to find out, am I crazy and making this shit up, or is it really happening, and do I really know this? And then you start looking around and going, okay, if I'm making this shit up, other people wouldn't know exactly what I know. So you're being objective with yourself now. And you're saying, if I made this up, I'll have my own theory, so I'll be wrong, and someone else will have a different theory. And then you'll look out there and you'll find other people that have a different theory, and you'll go, maybe I made this up. Then you'll run on to somebody who says the same thing you say, and you'll go, wait a minute. Okay? So if I'm crazy, that person's exactly the same crazy as I am. How is that possible? And we're showing you this, and we're moving into the next phase to show people exactly that. And I've been doing that and teaching that for 35 years. And literally our coalition and like 3 or 4 of the members of the coalition are currently in the audience today. Cassie being one of them, Peter being one of them, who came here on the same bus with me. We're literally moving into a different phase to where we're going to be putting together a platform so that everything I'm telling you right now, you're going to see not just me, but other people. And that's why I brought up this. I don't know these people from the God Man. I don't know them. But I do know that their mission is the exact same as mine. So I've never met them, but I suspect that we came here at the same time with the same people. I don't know that guy who made that video, but I suspect that that guy is on the same mission as I am because he's talking about the same universal knowledge and trying to get that information out to the world. So either we're all crazy and we all learned this craziness from the same source, which none of us learned it from each other, and we didn't read it because it's not been left on books for you to find. It's esoteric. It is there, and this is why God-Man tells you about it. It's showing you how to read between the lines. I say the same thing. They don't talk about it in here that I found, but the letters to the churches, I think they mentioned that. The letters to the churches and the revelation of Jesus Christ is the ascension. It is telling you how to balance your chakras. And that's where I started investigating the words, because I need to look up the words for the next book that I'm going to be writing that'll come out in a couple years to explain to you what the words of each church means and the definition, to show you the definition of the red ray chakra and the first letter to the first church, and that word in Hebrew that Jesus told was the letter to a church is a place where they say, well, that's a church over here in that area. But the word, the Hebrew word, and the definition of that Hebrew word is the same definition that is the definition of the red ray root chakra. And all the words he uses to tell the letter to the church that this is what you need to do, and I'm mad at you if you don't do this, and then says, let him who hath the understanding, right? Let him who hath the ears to hear this, which is a highlight that says, what I'm telling you here is esoteric, and there's a message within a message here. And then I'm going to break down to you what that message is and show you that it's how to balance the red ray chakra. That Jesus, 2,000 years ago, was telling people, knowing that when he said it outright, it was going to be edited out. And he said it down in words that were esoteric, that people would understand in the distant future, the now. And all of the prophecies in the Bibles are unlocking to people now in this time period around the world. And I'm one of those people. And I'm not saying that because I think I'm cool. I hid it from the world and tried to prove that I was wrong and made that shit up for 2 years now. Over 2 years. 2 years and 6 months. No, wait, this is month 4. 2 years and 4 or 5 months. Almost 2 years and 6 months. I have not told the world that I can translate I didn't know these people could either. And 2 years ago, they wrote a book translating the Bible into terms that is interpreting in a way that either they made it up crazy like I made it up crazy, like Lao Tzu made it up crazy in 604 BCE, 600 years before Jesus was born, and that the Buddha made up at the same time, and that Jesus made up, and that Muhammad made up, and that 5,000 years ago Moses made up, because all of those are the same story. And that the Santa Claus story out of the Viking religion is the same story. The story of the 7 plagues of Egypt and the exodus of Egypt is the same story of the chakras and the 7 letters to the churches. I'm telling you that right now. And I can prove that. And I'm going to, in my next book, I'm going to be breaking down parts of the Bible and parts of other religions to show everyone that the ancients on this world for all of time prior to 12,000 years ago, and specifically between the year 800 and the year 1500, most of the knowledge of this was eradicated off of this earth. And it started 12,000 years ago, and Jesus tried to fight against it, and so did so many other people. And they killed Jesus for it, and they killed everyone who was talking about it after that, and they eradicated everything. And all of that information that was hidden away is now coming to light, because they can't stop us anymore, because the population of the earth was 2.5 billion people in 1981, and it is now 7.9 billion people in 2024, because 86% of the population of this earth currently is not from here. And of that 86% of the population of the earth, and I'll leave you with this to think about, kids. I'll leave you, my children, to think about this. Of the 86% of the population of this earth that is not from this planet, there is a good portion of that, 66% of those people are here to help. And we have overwhelmed the evil 14%'s control by the 1% to stifle us any longer. And their way of life is dying, and it is going to be okay. All of the fear they're trying to preach to you is to keep you from the knowledge that I'm trying to tell you have access to. Not because you have to listen to me. You have to not listen to me, and you have to trust that I'm telling you an absolute lie, and you need to look this up for yourself. And when you go down this road and start looking things up for yourself and questioning, the second you start questioning this reality is the beginning of you unlocking the chains that are keeping you a prisoner here. So don't believe anything I've said. Doubt me. Think I'm lying and I've made this all up. And check in other places to see if anyone else is telling you this, because strangers that I don't know are telling you the same thing that I'm telling you. And I have never met these people, and I am not lying about that. You can contact them and find out if they know who I am. They probably never heard my name. Okay, so there's people around the world that have learned and unlocked this knowledge throughout time, and they were murdered for it until they can't kill us off anymore. Because there's more of us now that have control than they do, and we are protected, and we are here to fix this place. And it is not as bad as they keep trying to tell you on the channels, on television, and on the internet. They want you living in fear so they can control your mind. We want you knowing that it is okay and that you have unlimited. Jesus 2,000 years ago said, if you had just the size of mustard seed, which is very, very small, amount of faith, you could literally, those were the words he used, literally move mountains. Okay. So you don't have to believe me. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. What I'm trying to do is to get you to think for yourself and ask your own questions, because you're only going to believe what you know. And so I will say words to you that I hope make you think, because I can't convince you of anything. The only thing I can do is get you to start thinking for yourself. Critical thinking and asking questions is the end of their control over you, is the beginning of the rest of your new life, and you awakening to the possibilities of infinite love, infinite wisdom, and infinite knowledge from the universe that is yours and your right to access freely. And you will gain access to the same information that I know and millions of other people on this planet are learning and waking up to, because it's your God-given, creator-given right to do so, because that is the natural ecosystem of what was supposed to be going on this earth, and they took it from you without your knowledge. And they're gone now, and they have no control, and they left the insane asylum in charge, the insane people in charge of the insane asylum. And we have come here, millions of us, to remind you that no one is in control of you, because you have an immortal soul. You don't have an immortal soul. You are an immortal soul. This isn't happening to you. This is happening for you. All right. I love you guys. Have a great night. I will get those links to you, Stephanie, in the group, and anybody else in the A Law of One chat group that wants to see that video and plot the course of when their sun sign, when the moon goes into their sun sign. I'll have those up in the next 10 minutes or so for you guys to look at, check back. And if it's not there, give me a couple minutes, because I'm going to get dinner going, and then I'll sit down and do it. So give me about 10 minutes. I'll get it to you. I'll try to get the video first right now, and then I'll get dinner going, because while Mom's dinner is heating up, I can jump back and link that stuff to you. Okay. So I'll do that and get that up for you so you can watch that video, and then check out that link to the website that shows you. I don't know the people that made the video. I don't get anything from that. I don't know the people who own the website. I don't get anything from that. These are just the website that is a really cool one. You'll know because everybody in our group uses it. It's a really cool website. Somebody's making money off of it, and it's not us. All right. And the video is somebody's on YouTube, but it's the most explicit that gives you all this knowledge, okay, about the Christos and the crystal oil. All right. And the Christ oil. All right, guys. I love you guys. Have a great night. I will see you next week. This has been Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into the show.